Hey guys, esta noche vamos a hablar de sexo, pero no cualquier tipo de sexo. Vamos a viajar a la Edad Media, ese periodo largo y polvoriento entre castillos fríos, plagas extrañas y supersticiones pegajosas. Y sí, ahí también se hacía el delicioso. O al menos lo intentaban. Lo cierto es que si tú hubieras nacido en la Edad Media, probablemente no sobrevivías ni la infancia, mucho menos llegabas a experimentar algo remotamente parecido al amor libre. Lo tuyo sería más bien rezar, obedecer y reproducirte cuando y como la Iglesia lo permitiera. Divertido, ¿no? Así que antes de que te pongas cómodo, tómate un segundo para darle like al video y suscribirte, pero solo si de verdad disfrutas lo que hago aquí. Y cuéntame en los comentarios, ¿desde qué ciudad nos estás escuchando? ¿Y qué hora es allá donde estás? Ahora sí, baja las luces, tal vez prende un ventilador para ese zumbido de fondo que tanto ayuda. Y vamos entrando juntos en esta pequeña odisea medieval. Respira hondo, porque lo que vas a escuchar no siempre es bonito, pero sí es muy, muy interesante. Voilà. Lo primero que tienes que entender es que la Edad Media no era una época particularmente sex positive. De hecho, el sexo era visto como algo peligroso, casi siempre pecaminoso, y solo aceptado dentro de los confines del matrimonio. Y aún así, con cara de desaprobación, y la razón por la que la Edad Media se puso tan tensa con este tema tiene nombre propio, la Iglesia Católica. A ver, no es que antes del cristianismo todo fuera un carnaval orgiástico al estilo de Roma, aunque, más o menos, pero el cristianismo trajo consigo una narrativa mucho más rígida y moralista sobre el cuerpo y el deseo. Para la Iglesia, el sexo tenía una única función aceptable, la reproducción. Y todo lo demás, placer, experimentación, variedad, deseo mutuo, incluso besarse demasiado, era pecado, literalmente pecado. Y en la Edad Media, pecar era meterte con Dios, lo cual era tan grave como meterte con el rey, pero con más posibilidades de terminar quemado o desterrado espiritualmente. Uno de los textos más influyentes para definir cómo se debía vivir y sentir el sexo en ese entonces fue nada menos que la Biblia. Claro. Pero también los comentarios que hacían los teólogos. San Agustín, por ejemplo, ese señor que parecía tener una especie de obsesión con los genitales y la culpa, decía que el deseo sexual era una consecuencia del pecado original. O sea, por culpa de Adán y Eva comiéndose una manzana, tú no podías tocarte sin sentir que estabas yendo directo al infierno. Chévere. Y como el cristianismo medieval se apoyaba mucho en la idea de mortificar la carne, no solo se promovía el celibato entre los clérigos, sino que se miraba con desconfianza cualquier forma de goce carnal. El deseo era visto como algo que debía reprimirse, porque abría la puerta al demonio, literal. Según muchos sermones de la época, el demonio entraba a través de los sentidos. Así que una mirada lujuriosa, un pensamiento erótico, o simplemente el disfrute físico eran oportunidades de posesión espiritual. Imagínate vivir así. No ayudaba tampoco que la visión de la mujer fuera la de un ser inherentemente tentador. Según la mentalidad de la época, la mujer era el instrumento favorito del diablo para tentar al hombre. Así que el deseo femenino era aún más temido. Las mujeres que mostraban autonomía sexual, o simplemente no encajaban en el modelo de virgen o esposa sumisa, podían acabar acusadas de brujería. Pero bueno, no nos adelantemos. Las brujas merecen su propio episodio más adelante. Otro tema curioso es cómo la Iglesia regulaba hasta los detalles más íntimos del acto sexual. Existían manuales eclesiásticos que detallaban qué posturas estaban permitidas y cuáles eran pecaminosas. Spoiler, solo una era aceptable, y era la del misionero, hombre arriba, mujer abajo, sin mucha emoción y sin hacer ruidos raros. Cualquier otra cosa, sodomía. Aunque tú y tu pareja fueran esposos legítimos, si se les ocurría ponerse creativos, estaban pecando. Y sí, existían confesores que te preguntaban por esos detalles. No era como que podías irte al confesionario y decir, Padre, he pecado, y ya. Tenías que contar si lo hiciste por placer, si lo hiciste durante el día, si lo hiciste estando embarazada, si pensaste en otra persona mientras lo hacías, o si te atreviste a usar una posición no autorizada. Muy relajante todo. Lo que resulta fascinante es cómo esta vigilancia sobre el sexo no se limitaba a los actos, sino también a los pensamientos. Existía un verdadero terror al deseo. Muchos hombres y mujeres medievales crecieron pensando que tener fantasías era una señal de debilidad espiritual. Dormir con pensamientos impuros era casi como invocar a Lucifer a la almohada. Pero no todo era oscuridad y represión. Aquí va un dato curioso. Incluso dentro del marco cristiano existían algunos momentos donde el sexo era visto con cierta reverencia, especialmente cuando se hablaba de la unión matrimonial como un sacramento. Algunos teólogos reconocían que el placer no era completamente evitable y que Dios había diseñado el acto con cierto gusto por una razón, aunque eso sí, solo dentro del matrimonio en ciertos días, y mejor si era por procreación. Y luego está el debate académico que aún sigue sin resolverse del todo. ¿La gente común realmente seguía estas reglas tan estrictas? O mejor dicho, ¿eran tan castos como nos quieren hacer creer los sermones medievales? Algunos historiadores opinan que el discurso religioso iba por un lado, pero la práctica popular iba por otro. Que sí, la iglesia predicaba, pero la gente, hacía lo que podía. Hay cartas, poemas y hasta registros judiciales que revelan una realidad más carnal, más contradictoria, más humana. La Edad Media, al final, no era un solo bloque de siglos grises y reprimidos. Era una época viva, diversa y llena de contradicciones. Y el sexo, aunque oficialmente vigilado por Dios y sus representantes terrenales, se colaba entre las grietas del control. Porque al final, como siempre, el deseo encuentra sus caminos. Te casas. Te casan. Porque en la Edad Media, el matrimonio no era un acto de amor romántico, ni mucho menos una elección personal. Era un contrato. Un trato cerrado entre familias, a veces cuando tú apenas habías aprendido a decir mamá. Así que si esperabas flores, serenatas o el famoso "y vivieron felices para siempre", lamento decepcionarte. Lo más probable es que ni conocieras a tu futura esposa o esposo hasta el mismo día de la boda. Y aún así, ya estaban firmados los papeles, selladas las alianzas políticas y contadas las vacas que cambiarían de dueño. El matrimonio medieval era un asunto legal y religioso a partes iguales. No bastaba con una ceremonia bonita y dos personas dándose el sí. Tenía que haber consentimiento de los padres, una dote, generalmente pagada por la familia de la novia, testigos y aprobación eclesiástica. Y no olvides que el matrimonio era indisoluble. Literalmente, una vez dicho el sí, no había vuelta atrás. El divorcio no existía en el sentido moderno. Solo anulaciones muy contadas bajo razones específicas, impotencia, consanguinidad no declarada, o que alguien ya estuviera casado en secreto. Por lo tanto, si descubrías que tu pareja era cruel, aburrida, infiel o simplemente tenía mal aliento, buena suerte. Eso era tu cruz de por vida. Y hablando de cruces, la Iglesia tenía mucho que decir sobre el papel de los esposos. El hombre debía ser el líder espiritual y moral del hogar. La mujer, su ayuda obediente. Se esperaba que ella se sometiera, física y espiritualmente. El marido es cabeza de la mujer como Cristo es cabeza de la Iglesia, repetían los clérigos en los sermones. Así que sí, el patriarcado medieval venía con respaldo bíblico. Esto no solo afectaba la dinámica emocional, sino también la sexual. El sexo dentro del matrimonio era visto como un deber conyugal. No necesariamente un derecho al placer, sino una obligación. Debías rendirle a tu esposo o a tu esposa cuando tocaba, sin importar si tenías ganas o no. Negarse al deber conyugal podía ser considerado una falta grave. Ahora bien, aquí hay algo interesante. A pesar de que el sexo estaba tan estrictamente controlado por la Iglesia, había un pequeño espacio para cierta negociación. Por ejemplo, el consentimiento era técnicamente necesario para que un matrimonio fuera válido. Si un hombre y una mujer se declaraban esposos ante testigos, aunque sin ceremonia, eso podía contar legalmente como una boda. Lo llamaban verba de praesenti, la palabra presente. Eso sí, luego las familias, y sobre todo los tribunales eclesiásticos, se metían a resolver el caos resultante. Porque claro, una cosa es decir, si quiero, y otra es firmar frente al cura con la dote lista. Otra cosa que te haría levantar una ceja es la edad en la que empezaba todo esto. Legalmente, en muchas partes de Europa, una niña podía casarse desde los 12 años y un niño desde los 14. Aunque en la práctica, muchas bodas se retrasaban hasta que la familia podía pagar la dote o asegurar una buena alianza. Aún así, los matrimonios precoces eran comunes, sobre todo en la nobleza, donde cada alianza matrimonial era una estrategia política. Y aquí viene un detalle rarísimo pero real. En algunos matrimonios nobles, el acto sexual debía ser verificado. ¿Cómo? Pues con testigos, literal. Algunos señores importantes tenían que demostrar que habían consumado su matrimonio. Así que mientras tú y tu flamante esposa intentaban iniciar su vida íntima, un par de figuras eclesiásticas o de la corte podían estar esperando afuera de la habitación, o en algunos casos adentro, presenciando el evento. Porque claro, sin sexo no había matrimonio válido. Y sin matrimonio válido no había herederos legítimos. Y sin herederos legítimos había guerras. O sea, básicamente el sexo de una pareja podía desatar conflictos internacionales. Nada de presión. Claro, no todo el mundo vivía en castillos ni se casaba por alianzas de tierras. Entre los campesinos las cosas eran un poco más informales, pero no por eso menos reguladas. La Iglesia seguía presente, bendiciendo matrimonios en pequeñas parroquias y recordando que todo debía hacerse como Dios manda, pero también había cierta flexibilidad. En pueblos pequeños era común que las parejas convivieran incluso antes de formalizar la unión, lo cual se toleraba mientras luego se hiciera oficial. Eso sí, si una mujer quedaba embarazada fuera del matrimonio, había escándalo, y en muchos casos, presión social o legal para que el padre reparara la situación con una boda rápida. Dato curioso, en algunas regiones de Europa existía una práctica conocida como el lecho de prueba. Una pareja podía dormir junta por unas noches antes del matrimonio para probar la relación. Esto era menos común, pero está documentado, y aunque nos suene moderno, tenía una lógica bien medieval: asegurarse de que el esposo no era impotente, porque la impotencia era una de las pocas razones válidas para anular un matrimonio ante la Iglesia. Ahora, una pregunta que sigue dividiendo a los historiadores es cuánto de todo esto era realidad vivida y cuánto era ideal propagado desde los púlpitos. Hay evidencia de que mucha gente del campo vivía sus relaciones con más libertad de la que los textos religiosos permiten suponer. Por ejemplo, hay archivos judiciales que muestran pleitos por infidelidades, separaciones no oficiales e incluso registros de parejas que convivían sin estar casadas formalmente. Entonces, ¿la gente seguía las reglas o solo fingía hacerlo mientras no los atraparan? Nadie lo sabe con certeza. La Edad Media, como siempre, guarda más secretos de los que confiesa. Y si piensas que esta visión del matrimonio suena opresiva, no estás solo. Muchos dentro de la propia Iglesia medieval intentaron reformar estas normas. Algunos clérigos defendían un enfoque más afectivo, incluso romántico, dentro del matrimonio, pero sus voces eran la excepción. En general, el ideal predominante era el del deber. Amar a tu cónyuge estaba bien, desearlo demasiado era sospechoso. En resumen, casarse en la Edad Media no era el inicio de una historia de amor, sino el cumplimiento de una función social, económica y espiritual. Y el sexo dentro de ese matrimonio no era placer ni conexión, era obediencia. Eso sí, ya verás que a pesar de todas esas reglas, la gente igual se las arreglaba para romperlas. Y ahora sí, llegamos a lo jugoso, el pecado de la carne. Ese término que suena como algo salido de un sermón de medianoche, pero que en la Edad Media era una verdadera obsesión colectiva. Y tú, como buen cristiano medieval, vivías con ese peso constante sobre los hombros, o mejor dicho, entre las piernas. Porque si algo quedaba claro, en los sermones, en los libros religiosos y en los manuales de confesión, era que el deseo sexual era una debilidad peligrosa, una prueba que podía llevarte al infierno con solo una mirada lasciva, un pensamiento húmedo o una mano traviesa bajo la manta. La Iglesia no solo regulaba lo que hacías con tu cuerpo, sino también lo que pensabas. La lujuria, uno de los 7 pecados capitales, no requería acción física para condenarte. Podía bastar con soñar algo indebido o mirar a alguien con demasiado entusiasmo. Imagínate vivir así, aterrorizado por tu propia biología, porque sí, el deseo era parte de tu humanidad, pero según la doctrina dominante también era el eco de tu pecado original. Un recordatorio de que el cuerpo no era tuyo, era un campo de batalla entre el alma y el demonio. Lo más perversamente curioso es que este pánico moral no era espontáneo, ni surgía de la nada. Venía de un esfuerzo sistemático de control. La Iglesia medieval se dedicó a crear toda una estructura de pensamiento para contener el deseo humano. ¿Cómo? Primero, estableciendo que el sexo solo era lícito dentro del matrimonio. Luego, definiendo que incluso dentro del matrimonio, debía ser exclusivamente para la procreación, y más allá de eso, imponiendo normas sobre cuándo y cómo se podía tener relaciones. Spoiler, había muchos días en los que no se podía. Por ejemplo, había periodos del calendario litúrgico donde el sexo estaba completamente prohibido. Cuaresma, Adviento, los domingos, las vigilias de los santos, sumando todo, llegabas fácilmente a más de 30 días al año en los que acostarse con tu pareja era considerado un pecado. Y si eso no te parecía suficiente, también se desaconsejaba el sexo durante el embarazo, la menstruación o la lactancia. O sea, ¿cuándo se podía realmente? Casi nunca. Pero eso no detenía a nadie, claro. Y aquí entra un detalle que suena casi cómico, pero era muy real. Los manuales de confesión de la época eran increíblemente específicos. Te los imaginas como algo vago, ¿no? Pues no, tenían listas detalladas de pecados relacionados con el sexo. Desde mirar a tu pareja con demasiado deseo hasta masturbarse, tener sexo fuera del misionero o simplemente disfrutar demasiado. Incluso había tarifas de penitencia. ¿Tuviste sexo con tu esposa por placer y no por hijos? 10 Padre Nuestros. ¿Pensaste en otra persona mientras lo hacías? Aumenta a 20. Parecía un menú de castigos morales. Y sí, la masturbación era considerada gravísima. No solo porque involucraba placer sin procreación, sino porque era vista como un acto de egoísmo puro, una corrupción del cuerpo. Los sermones advertían que Dios lo veía todo, incluso si tú estabas solo, bajo una manta, en una cabaña oscura. Un teólogo llegó a decir que la semilla derramada sin propósito era como matar almas no nacidas, así de gráfico, así de culpabilizador. El pecado de Onán, ese personaje bíblico que derramó su semilla en la tierra, se convirtió en símbolo de la condena al acto solitario. Y si la masturbación era condenada, ni hablemos del sexo anal, oral o cualquier otro tipo de práctica que se desviara del guión oficial. Todo eso caía bajo el paraguas de sodomía, una palabra que hoy suena antigua pero que en la Edad Media era muy real y muy peligrosa. Podía implicar castigos severos, desde penitencias largas hasta ejecuciones en casos extremos. Especialmente si se trataba de relaciones entre personas del mismo sexo. La línea entre lo privado y lo público era mucho más difusa cuando el clero y las autoridades civiles se sentían con derecho a entrar en tu cama y juzgar tus impulsos. Ahora, lo más triste de todo esto es que esta mentalidad no solo afectaba las acciones, sino también la autoestima. Muchos hombres y mujeres crecieron pensando que su cuerpo era su enemigo, que sentir deseo era fallar como cristiano, que gozar del sexo, incluso dentro del matrimonio, era ceder al demonio. Esto dejó cicatrices profundas, no físicas, claro, sino psicológicas. Aún hoy, siglos después, muchas de esas ideas siguen flotando en el aire, disfrazadas de moralidad, de decencia o de valores tradicionales. Pero no todo era tan lineal ni tan represivo como parece. Porque aquí viene la parte que desconcierta a los historiadores. Hay indicios de que la gente no siempre tomaba estas reglas tan en serio. Se confesaban, sí, pero también se reían de escondidas. Encontraban formas de esquivar los controles. Por ejemplo, las confesiones no eran siempre honestas. Muchos se limitaban a decir lo mínimo para cumplir, sin detallar lo que realmente pasaba. Era una especie de teatro moral. Aparentar devoción en público, pero vivir con humanidad en privado. Y hablando de datos curiosos, ¿sabías que en algunos monasterios se hacían penitencias comunitarias por pecados sexuales cometidos en sueños? Así es, los monjes se levantaban en la mañana y si alguno había tenido una emisión nocturna, debía hacer confesión incluso si no lo recordaba, como si tu cuerpo pudiera traicionarte mientras dormías. El deseo era tan vigilado que ni los sueños escapaban. También había debates entre teólogos sobre si el deseo era inevitable. Algunos argumentaban que sí, que era parte de la naturaleza humana caída. Otros defendían que podía eliminarse con suficiente disciplina y oración. Pero ninguno ofrecía una solución real. Solo más culpa, más represión y más listas de cosas que no debías pensar, sentir o imaginar. Y así vivías, atrapado entre tus instintos y tu fe, entre lo que querías y lo que debías, con la sensación de que tu cuerpo era una trampa y tu mente un campo minado. No sorprende que muchos buscaran salidas secretas, fantasías privadas, o incluso escapatorias más peligrosas que ya exploraremos en los próximos capítulos. Lo cierto es que, más allá de toda la represión, el deseo persistía, como una llama bajo la nieve, Y eso nos dice algo muy simple pero poderoso, que el cuerpo, incluso cuando lo condenan, sigue queriendo vivir, y amar, y gozar. Porque el pecado de la carne, al final, no era solo una condena, también era una confesión velada de que, a pesar de todo, el deseo no se puede matar. Y si creías que los reyes y reinas estaban por encima de todo este enredo moral, te tengo noticias. Sus sábanas también eran campo de batalla, solo que con más joyas, más política y muchísimos más chismes. Porque del sexo real, y no me refiero al sexo auténtico, sino al que ocurría en las camas de la realeza medieval, era una mezcla confusa de deber dinástico, escándalos secretos y, sí, pasiones de estas que ni los sermones del obispo más conservador podían contener. Si eras noble, tu cuerpo no era solo tuyo, era un bien del Estado, una herramienta diplomática, y tus orgasmos, o la falta de ellos, podían tener consecuencias históricas. Todo empezaba, como siempre, con el matrimonio. Pero en este nivel de la pirámide social no era ni siquiera un tema de conveniencia, era una jugada geopolítica. Las bodas reales se negociaban como tratados. Tu prometido podía ser un completo desconocido que vivía a 1000 kilómetros de distancia, hablaba otro idioma y tenía la misma pasión por ti que por su caballo de guerra, pero daba igual. Porque lo importante era sellar alianzas, unir dinastías y, más que nada, producir herederos. Y esa palabra, heredero, era la clave de todo. El objetivo número uno del sexo real no era el placer, ni el afecto, ni mucho menos el deseo mutuo. Era asegurar una línea sucesoria. Si eras rey, tu deber era dejar descendencia. Si eras reina, tu útero era esencialmente propiedad de la corona. Había presión desde el primer día, y no solo del clero o de los nobles, también del pueblo, que esperaba ver un príncipe nacer para asegurar el futuro del reino. Si pasaban los años sin hijos, empezaban los susurros. ¿Será que la reina no puede? ¿Será que el rey no funciona? Y cuando había dudas, no faltaban las soluciones extravagantes. Había doctores, alquimistas y clérigos que recetaban cosas como beber extracto de testículos de ciervo, baños en leche de burra o rezos especiales durante el acto. Literalmente. Imagínate tener que copular mientras un sacerdote rezaba afuera de la habitación. Porque sí, la Iglesia estaba tan involucrada en estas uniones que, en algunos casos, las primeras relaciones sexuales eran bendecidas oficialmente. Bienvenidos al erotismo litúrgico. Pero claro, a pesar de todo el decoro público, lo privado era otra historia. Muchos reyes mantenían amantes, y no una, sino varias. Algunas incluso vivían dentro del palacio con títulos honoríficos como dama de compañía o ayudante de la reina, cuando en realidad compartían cama con el monarca en turno. Este sistema era tan común que en algunas cortes se esperaba que el rey tuviera una amante oficial como un símbolo de virilidad. Lo curioso es que, aunque el adulterio era pecado y podía ser condenable para los plebeyos, en la realeza se toleraba, siempre y cuando el escándalo no se hiciera público ni afectara la producción de herederos legítimos. Dato curioso, en la corte francesa, la amante del rey tenía un papel casi institucional. Era reconocida, a veces incluso con habitación propia en el Palacio de Versalles. Más adelante, en el Renacimiento y la Edad Moderna, algunas se volvían figuras políticas influyentes, negociando favores, alianzas y hasta decisiones militares desde la cama del rey. Entonces sí, tener sexo real podía venir con poder real, si jugabas bien tus cartas. ¿Y las reinas qué hacían? Pues aquí viene el giro interesante. Muchas también buscaban compañía fuera del matrimonio, aunque con mucho más riesgo. Una reina adúltera podía perderlo todo: su título, su vida, su cabeza, literalmente. Pero eso no significaba que no lo hicieran. Existen decenas de rumores, cartas y crónicas sobre reinas que mantenían relaciones secretas con caballeros, sirvientes o incluso clérigos. Uno de los casos más famosos es el de la reina Leonor de Aquitania, que fue acusada de tener amantes mientras su esposo, el rey Luis VII de Francia, estaba fuera en cruzadas. Nunca se comprobó, claro, pero el rumor bastó para alimentar siglos de novelas históricas y canciones de trovadores. Y hablando de trovadores, hay que hablar del erotismo cortesano. En las cortes medievales, especialmente en el sur de Francia y en la península ibérica, surgió un estilo de amor que hoy llamaríamos platónico, pero que estaba cargado de deseo. Los trovadores componían canciones para damas nobles, expresando un amor idealizado, inalcanzable y lleno de sufrimiento sensual. Decían cosas como «muero por no tocarte», «te adoro desde lejos» o «dame solo una mirada, mi señora», todo muy poético, pero también lleno de tensión sexual disfrazada de espiritualidad. Era el equivalente medieval a escribir poemas tristes en Twitter. Este tipo de erotismo, aunque no siempre consumado, servía como una vía de escape emocional, porque en un entorno donde el sexo estaba tan regulado, reprimido o convertido en tarea política, el deseo encontraba nuevas formas de expresarse, a veces con canciones, a veces con cartas, y, en otras ocasiones, con actos muy reales que terminaban en escándalo, juicio eclesiástico o incluso ejecuciones. Una de las preguntas que más intrigan a los académicos hoy es, ¿hasta qué punto estos rumores eran ciertos? ¿Realmente los reyes eran tan libertinos como decían los cronistas enemigos? ¿O era todo parte de una campaña de desprestigio? Porque hay que recordar que los enemigos políticos usaban la acusación de inmoralidad sexual como herramienta de guerra. Bastaba con que alguien dijera que una reina tenía amantes o que un rey se entregaba a placeres prohibidos para poner en duda su autoridad moral. La cama era, en muchos sentidos, otro campo de batalla político. Ahora, más allá de los chismes y las intrigas, lo que queda claro es que la sexualidad en la realeza medieval era un equilibrio tenso entre el deber público y el deseo privado. Tenías que mantener la imagen de virtud, fertilidad y poder, mientras navegabas tus propias pasiones, tus frustraciones y tus múltiples deberes conyugales. En un mundo donde tener un hijo varón podía asegurar décadas de estabilidad política, el sexo no era solo placer o amor, era política pura. Así que la próxima vez que pienses en castillos, coronas y bailes de corte, recuerda esto. Detrás de cada trono había un lecho, y en ese lecho muchas veces se tejía el destino de reinos enteros. Ahora deja los castillos por un momento y baja conmigo al suelo, literalmente. Porque si quieres entender cómo era la vida sexual en la Edad Media de verdad, no puedes quedarte solo con las intrigas palaciegas. Toca ensuciarse un poco, sentir el barro entre los dedos y oler el humo del hogar pobre. Vamos con la mayoría, los campesinos, aquellos que no tenían ni títulos, ni lujos, ni habitaciones privadas con dosel, sino chozas de una sola pieza, colchones de paja y un sentido del pudor que dependía más del clima que de la moral religiosa. Imagina que vives en una aldea minúscula, en una casa de barro y madera donde duermes con tu familia entera, padres, hermanos, hijos y, a veces, hasta los animales menores, todo en un solo espacio. No hay puertas entre cuartos porque no hay cuartos, y aún así, en medio de esa cercanía obligada, el sexo seguía ocurriendo. Porque había que seguir teniendo hijos, claro, pero también porque el deseo no espera a que te construyas una segunda planta. La intimidad era un lujo que los campesinos simplemente no se podían permitir. Si eras joven y casado, tu habitación podía ser solo un rincón del hogar, quizás separado por una manta o un mueble improvisado. En las noches frías, que eran la mayoría, se dormía en grupo, muy juntos, buscando calor. Así que hacer el amor era una operación logística delicada, silenciosa y muchas veces rápida. No por falta de ganas, sino porque tu madre estaba a 2 metros, tu suegro roncaba al lado, y el gallo solía cantar justo cuando te empezabas a relajar. Y aún así, la gente encontraba maneras. Los bosques cercanos, los campos después de la cosecha, los establos, todos podían convertirse en el momento oportuno en escenarios eróticos improvisados. No era glamoroso, pero era real. El deseo no pedía permiso, ni a la iglesia, ni al clima, ni al sentido común. Si eras campesino, el sexo era una parte inevitable y tosca de la vida. No había velas aromáticas, pero sí cierta complicidad básica entre quienes entendían que, pese a todo, había que vivir un poco. Lo más curioso es que, a pesar de toda la pobreza y el control moral de la Iglesia, el sexo entre campesinos parece haber tenido un componente más terrenal, más relajado incluso. No porque no fueran creyentes, de hecho muchos lo eran muy profundamente, sino porque, en la práctica, las necesidades mandaban. Si quedabas embarazada antes del matrimonio, claro que había consecuencias sociales. Podían señalarte en misa, hacerte pagar multas simbólicas, incluso obligarte a casarte a toda prisa. Pero eso no evitaba que ocurriera. Y ocurría. Mucho. hay registros parroquiales en los que aparecen niños bautizados de padre desconocido, y también juicios en los que una mujer acusa a un hombre de haberle prometido casamiento tras consumar el acto. Estas promesas sexuales eran tomadas tan en serio que, si se probaba que él había tenido relaciones con ella bajo palabra de matrimonio, podía ser obligado a cumplir. Era el equivalente medieval del "me dijo que me amaba". Y hablando de legalidades, aquí va un dato poco conocido. En algunos pueblos existía la costumbre de que una pareja comprometida podía probar la convivencia antes de casarse formalmente. Se le llamaba espousals o betrothal, una especie de unión preliminar en la que, si se consumaba la relación, ya contaba como matrimonio en muchos casos. Esto generaba toda una zona gris en la que algunas parejas vivían juntas, tenían hijos y luego regularizaban la situación. La Iglesia no lo aprobaba del todo, pero tampoco podía detenerlo, porque en la práctica estas uniones eran parte del tejido social. Pero no todo era pragmatismo. También había supersticiones, y muchas. Por ejemplo, se creía que tener relaciones sexuales durante una tormenta podía atraer rayos, o que hacerlo cuando la luna estaba llena aumentaba las probabilidades de tener hijos deformes. Algunas mujeres llevaban pequeños amuletos, hechos de hierbas, huesos o incluso partes de animales, para protegerse de embarazos no deseados o malos espíritus durante el acto. Era un cruce extraño entre sexualidad, religión popular y magia. Y es que en este nivel de la sociedad, la medicina y la superstición iban de la mano. Había curanderas que decían poder desatar el nudo del vientre para ayudar a la fertilidad o cerrarlo para evitarla. Y sí, eso incluía métodos rudimentarios de anticoncepción como infusiones de plantas que muchas veces eran peligrosas, pero igual se usaban. Porque aunque la Iglesia dijera que el sexo era solo para procrear, las campesinas sabían que no podían alimentar a 10 hijos, así que entre rezos y brebajes buscaban formas de controlar lo incontrolable. ¿Y qué hay del placer? ¿Era siquiera una conversación posible? Pues sí, aunque de forma velada. En las canciones populares, en los refranes y en los cuentos contados junto al fuego, había constantes alusiones al sexo como algo más que un deber. Se hablaba de deseo, de pasión, incluso de infidelidades, todo envuelto en humor o moralejas. Eran pequeñas válvulas de escape para una vida dura. No había literatura erótica accesible, pero el folclore cumplía esa función, y muchas veces con bastante picardía. Aquí entra un debate entre historiadores. ¿La vida sexual campesina era realmente más libre que la de las clases altas, o simplemente más oculta? Algunos argumentan que la represión era igual de fuerte, solo que con menos vigilancia formal. Otros dicen que, al no estar constantemente observados por clérigos o cortesanos, los campesinos podían vivir su sexualidad con menos culpa, aunque igual con temor a los castigos divinos. La verdad probablemente está en algún punto intermedio, como casi todo en la Edad Media. Lo que sí está claro es que el cuerpo en el mundo campesino no era un templo de pureza, sino una herramienta de supervivencia. Se usaba para trabajar, para resistir, para parir, para gozar cuando se podía. No había tiempo para grandes discursos sobre la castidad. Solo hambre, cansancio y de vez en cuando el alivio de un momento compartido entre dos personas bajo una manta de lana áspera. Así que la próxima vez que imagines la Edad Media como una época de represión total, recuerda que incluso entre la pobreza y la superstición, el deseo seguía vivo. Tal vez no tenía un colchón cómodo ni privacidad, pero tenía calor humano, y eso, a veces, bastaba. Y sí, aunque suene extraño, en plena Edad Media también existían manuales sobre cómo tener sexo correctamente. O, mejor dicho, sobre cómo evitar hacerlo mal, que en lenguaje medieval significa no pecar en exceso mientras procreas. Porque a pesar del aura de oscuridad y represión que solemos atribuirle a ese periodo, los textos didácticos, escritos por clérigos, médicos o sabios de toga polvorienta, abordaban la sexualidad de forma directa, casi clínica, aunque siempre desde una perspectiva moral. Y lo más surrealista, algunos de estos manuales sobrevivieron al tiempo. Sí, alguien escribió con pluma en pergamino cosas como «No hagas esto en martes» o «Evita pensar en tu vecino mientras yaces con tu esposa». Uno de los textos más citados es el de Secretis Mulierum, los secretos de las mujeres, atribuido al mismísimo Pseudo Alberto Magno. El libro parecía más interesado en convertir el cuerpo femenino en un mapa de trampas demoníacas que en educar para una vida conyugal saludable. Afirmaba, por ejemplo, que el útero tenía múltiples compartimentos y que el placer de la mujer podía ser tan ardiente que calentaba la semilla del hombre hasta el punto de deformar al niño. ¿Ciencia? No mucho. ¿Ficción gótica con toque biológico? Absolutamente. Otro documento muy curioso es el penitencial de Veda, que servía como una especie de menú de pecados sexuales, con su correspondiente castigo. Ahí podías leer cosas como: si un hombre se acuesta con su esposa por deseo más que por procreación, 10 días de pan y agua, pero si lo hacía de pie o de lado, 20. Y si se atrevían a abusar la boca, bueno, mejor no sigas leyendo, porque eso sí que era territorio del diablo. A ojos medievales, cada desviación postural era como un golpe a la moral del universo. El misionero era el santo grial de la decencia, mientras que todo lo demás era desorden cósmico. Pero no todos los textos eran tan secos. Algunos mezclaban teología con medicina, tratando de explicar el cuerpo desde el equilibrio de los famosos humores: sangre, bilis negra, bilis amarilla y flema. Según esta teoría, el deseo sexual era una manifestación de un desequilibrio. Si sentías demasiadas ganas, probablemente estabas lleno de bilis caliente o tu flema estaba loca. Así que la solución no era ir al confesionario, sino aplicar sangrías, infusiones de menta, baños tibios o, en casos extremos, evitar mirar mujeres. O queso curado, porque sí, se creía que ciertos alimentos estimulaban el deseo como si fueran afrodisíacos medievales. El ajo, por ejemplo, era sospechoso. En el otro extremo del espectro estaban los textos sobre castidad, que aunque no eran exactamente manuales sexuales, hablaban muchísimo de sexo, solo que en negativo. Los autores de estos tratados, casi todos monjes, dedicaban páginas y páginas a describir lo terrible que era el deseo, en términos tan detallados que uno empieza a sospechar que estaban demasiado familiarizados con aquello que condenaban. San Jerónimo, por ejemplo, escribió sobre cómo el solo recuerdo de mujeres lo perturbaba mientras dormía en su celda. Se golpeaba el pecho con piedras para eliminar las tentaciones. ¿Funcionaba? No, pero al menos hacía cardio. Lo realmente interesante es cómo estos textos revelan no solo una visión moralista del sexo, sino también un intento desesperado por entenderlo. Porque aunque el discurso oficial decía «solo para procrear», la realidad es que todo el mundo sabía que el deseo existía, que la gente lo sentía, que las cosas pasaban entre sábanas de lino o de arpillera y que ni el más puro podía escapar del tirón animal de la carne. Así que estos manuales, en el fondo, eran intentos de negociar con esa realidad incómoda: cómo tener sexo sin caer en la perdición eterna, cómo hacerlo inevitable sin acabar como ejemplo en un sermón. Y hay un detalle rarísimo que demuestra cuán meticulosos podían ser. En algunos de estos manuales se hablaba de los mejores días del mes para concebir un varón. Según la medicina medieval, el calor generaba varones y el frío, mujeres. Por eso recomendaban hacerlo en días cálidos, después de comidas sustanciosas y con la mujer mirando hacia el este, porque por supuesto la dirección también importaba. Todo influía: el clima, la comida, la hora, la posición, los astros, más que una noche de pasión. Parecía una alineación astral con instrucciones de montaje, y aquí es donde entra uno de los debates académicos más jugosos del tema. ¿Estos textos eran normativos o descriptivos? Es decir, ¿realmente la gente seguía estas instrucciones? ¿O eran simplemente ideales escritos por clérigos que vivían más tiempo en bibliotecas que en camas? Algunos historiadores creen que, especialmente en los monasterios, estos manuales eran más estudiados que seguidos. Otros sugieren que sí tenían un impacto, especialmente entre las clases altas, que buscaban demostrar su virtud a través del cumplimiento de estas normas. Pero lo cierto es que, en la práctica, la sexualidad medieval era mucho más compleja y contradictoria que cualquier manual pudiera contener, y aún más fascinante. En medio de tanto control y represión, a veces surgían voces que hablaban del sexo como algo positivo. Raras, sí, pero ahí estaban. Algunos médicos reconocían que el placer tenía beneficios para la salud, que las mujeres también tenían deseo y que ignorarlo podía enfermar su cuerpo. Un concepto adelantado a su tiempo, aunque, claro, rápidamente encajonado por otros autores que volvían al eterno cuidado con la tentación. ¿Y sabes qué es lo más medieval de todo esto? Que a pesar de los siglos y las diferencias tecnológicas, algunas de estas ideas aún flotan por ahí. Las dudas sobre si algo es natural, el miedo a desear demasiado, la obsesión por lo correcto, todo eso sigue apareciendo disfrazado de moral moderna, como si los fantasmas de los manuscritos del siglo XIII aún susurraran entre nuestras almohadas. Así que la próxima vez que te encuentres con un artículo diciendo las 7 posiciones permitidas por la religión o cómo tener una relación pura en 10 pasos, solo recuerda, ya en la Edad Media escribían eso, con tinta, en pergamino, y con la misma mezcla de temor, curiosidad y deseo que tú puedes sentir hoy. Nada nuevo bajo el sol ni bajo las sábanas. You wake with no sense of time which, honestly, fits perfectly. There's no sunrise to greet you, no birds chirping, no alarm gently nudging you into the waking world with cheerful chimes. No, this is the Ice Age, and the sky outside is probably the same shade of grey it's been for days, maybe weeks. The cave still glows faintly with the amber warmth of banked embers, but there's no natural light creeping in. For all you know, it could be the middle of the night or well into what passes for day in this eternal winter. Time here is measured by firelight and hunger, not by clocks. You sit up slowly, careful not to dislodge the blanket of hide still half draped over your legs. A few others are stirring too, in that slow, unhurried way that people do when there's no urgency except not freezing to death. There's a general sense of grogginess, a communal hangover brought on by too much darkness and not enough sun. You rub your eyes and glance toward the entrance, still covered, still blocking out the worst of the cold, but there's a dull glow seeping in through the seams, dim, indirect. Moonlight, a rare flash of pale daylight filtered through storm clouds. It doesn't matter. It's light, which means it's something. And that something is unsettling. It messes with your sense of time, and not in a charming, I slept in on Sunday kind of a way. It's disorienting, like you've dropped into a dream and don't know how long you've been there. You ask yourself, how many hours have passed since you first laid down in this cave? How many days? There's no clear answer. Out here in the depths of prehistoric winter, the line between day and night is less of a boundary and more of a vague suggestion. It's just varying shades of grey, cloudy dusk, darker dusk, night, and then the dreaded bright grey that counts as noon. This isn't just a poetic observation. It has a real effect on the body. You start to notice them. Your eyelids are heavy even though you just woke up. Your thoughts feel molasses thick. You can't remember your last full dream, and your hunger feels more like a suggestion than a need. Welcome to circadian disintegration. Without sunlight to anchor your biological rhythms, your internal clock gets woozy. Your body doesn't know when to sleep, when to eat, when to wake. It just floats, and that's exactly what scientists today find fascinating. When researchers study people in environments with no natural light, caves, Arctic stations, bunkers, they find something uncanny. The human sleep cycle begins to fragment. People sleep in waves, sometimes for a few hours at a time, broken up by long periods of quiet wakefulness. It's not insomnia, it's biology reverting to a more ancient pattern, one that probably mirrors how your cave companions are operating right now around you. People are slipping in and out of sleep like it's a gentle tide. No one is jumping up to greet the day. No one is scrambling to be productive. It's not laziness, it's survival. Rest as much as possible. Conserve warmth. Let your body do what it needs to do when it needs to do it. There are no morning people here, only people who are less cold than they were an hour ago. You stand up slowly, stretching your arms above your head, and your joints crack like frozen branches. Your body aches in the way it does after sleeping too much, not too little. The air is cool, but not unbearable. Someone has refreshed the fire with new wood, and now it glows like a sleepy eye, half-lidded but alive. One of the elders is awake, muttering softly to himself, tracing patterns on the ground with a blackened stick. You wonder if he even knows what time it is. You wonder if he cares. In fact, you start to realize something a little eerie. Time might not really exist here. Not in the way you understand it. Not in schedules or to-do lists or daily routines. The world of this cave operates on a different rhythm, dictated by survival, by cold, by hunger and firelight. Days blur. Sleep becomes fluid. Time is only marked by what changes. and in winter that's not much. So how did prehistoric people deal with this? Scholars are still debating. Some believe these extended dark seasons fostered a unique kind of mental state, something akin to hibernation. Not full-on bear style, but a low-energy mode where the brain and body slow down, conserving resources. You can feel it now in your own sluggish limbs, in the way your thoughts drift, unanchored. It's like being stoned on darkness. But others propose a different theory, one that's almost romantic. They think the long nights of prehistoric winter were creative times. With little sunlight and no farming or hunting to do, people may have turned inward, told more stories, created more art, bonded more closely, developed rituals and songs and dreams that only bloom in the dark. A sort of prehistoric hygge, if you will, candlelight coziness at its most primal. You turn back toward the cave wall where faint carvings and handprints mark the stone like ghost graffiti. Maybe they were made during one of these timeless nights. Maybe someone, unable to sleep, just needed to make something. Anything. A reminder that they existed, even when the sun seemed to forget them. Still, the darkness comes at a cost. Without sunlight, the body struggles. Vitamin D becomes a scarcity. Bones ache. Immune systems falter. Mood drops like a stone. You wouldn't be surprised if half the people in this cave are mildly depressed. Not that they'd call it that. There's no word for seasonal affective disorder in a culture without words, but the feeling is there. The heaviness, the Scheuersymptoms, the stares into the middle distance as if everyone's waiting for something that might never come back. Outside, the light doesn't grow stronger. It just hovers, a pale, ghostly glow that feels more like a rumour than a sunrise. You step toward the entrance, parting the hides just enough to peek out. The world is bleached, snow piled high against rocks, trees with limbs like blackened claws. The sky a smear of white and silver. You blink and your eyes water. It's beautiful, yes, but it's not welcoming. You let the hides fall closed again and turn back toward the fire. No one says anything. No one needs to. Time isn't told here. It's felt. Through the groan of your muscles, the depth of your breath, the warmth of your fur bundle. Through the understanding that out there the world is frozen solid. But in here, inside this dim little stone heartbeat, you are still soft, still breathing, still waiting for the sun. You're just starting to doze again, lulled by the hypnotic hush of the cave and the slow crackle of the fire, when you hear it, a soft rustling near the wall. At first you think it's someone adjusting their bedding, but then it comes again, a quiet shuffle, followed by the unmistakable sound of something being unwrapped. You lift your head and squint toward the noise. Just inside the firelight, someone is crouched low, their silhouette hunched over what looks like a bundle of tightly bound skins. They're careful, deliberate. Whatever they're opening, it's precious. You sit up slowly, trying not to draw attention, and watch. It's food. You catch the scent before you see the contents. Rich, musky, and almost sweet. Not fresh meat, not stew. Dried meat. Hard and dark, waxy at the edges, strung together in long strands like leathery ribbons. The person, one of the younger hunters, carefully peels a strip free and examines it, checking for mold or ice. Satisfied, he takes a bite. It's chewy. Tough. Probably older than you'd want to know, but it keeps, and it sustains. He glances around and notices you watching. Without a word, he holds out a piece. You hesitate for only a second, then crawl forward on hands and knees, reaching for it. Your fingers brush his, and the strip of meat is cold in your hand, but quickly warms against your skin. You nod, and he nods back. Then he turns away and continues picking through the stash. You bite into it. At first, it's like chewing a tire. Your teeth fight to tear off even a small piece, and your jaw aches almost immediately. But then the flavour hits, gamey, smoky, with a tang of fermented fat and something vaguely mineral. It's not bad, just committed. You chew and eventually swallow, your body registering the intake like a sponge soaking up water. A few bites in, and you're already more alert, more grounded. Hunger had crept in so quietly you didn't even realise it was there. Turns out Ice Age jerky is more than just a snack. It's survival engineering. This isn't just dried meat, it's preserved energy. These people don't have fridges, and they can't exactly swing by a snowbank and dig up dinner every time their stomach grumbles. Winter hunting is risky, unpredictable. So in the warmer months, when prey is plentiful and spirits are high, they prepare. They slice meat thin and hang it high where the wind and sun can dry it slowly, or they smoke it over a low fire for hours, even days. letting the smoke seep in and seal it like a primitive marinade. Sometimes they mix it with rendered fat and crushed berries to make a sticky, dense paste known in some cultures as the ancestor of pemmican. Portable calories, no cooking required. You chew more slowly now, savouring the idea as much as the food. There's something sacred about this act, about consuming meat that was hunted months ago by someone who might be lying 2 feet away from you right now. Maybe the animal it came from was a reindeer, or a wild horse, or something stranger. Something with a name you've never heard and a taste you've never known. Whatever it was, it died under the effort of this group. And now, in the dead of winter, its body continues to protect them. Through boots, through bedding, through jerky. You look down at the strip in your hand. It's dark, almost black, with tiny threads of sinew like fibres in old rope. This might be the most intimate meal you've ever eaten. Near the fire, another figure emerges. A woman, tall and thin, her hair tied back with a bit of bark fibre cord. She joins the boy, and they begin portioning out more food from the bundle. You watch them work, slicing chunks with flint blades, wrapping smaller pieces in bits of moss and hide, passing them around to the half-awake figures stirring in their beds. There's no rush, no lines, no arguments. Everyone gets something. The rule here is simple. If there's food, you share it. You receive another piece and nod your thanks. This time it tastes slightly different, saltier, maybe aged in a different way. You're not sure if it's your imagination or just the fire playing tricks on your senses. Either way, it fills you. As the cave wakes slowly, the ritual of eating continues. There's no formal breakfast, no mealtime, just moments of hunger and the shared knowledge of where to find relief. Some people chew in shens, others sit close together, trading quiet remarks. You hear a short burst of laughter, a rare sound in this frozen season, but not unwelcome. It cuts through the gloom like sunlight might, if sunlight ever dared to show up. And now you notice the containers. Primitive storage, but clever. Animal stomachs tied shut. Large bone segments sealed with plugs of fat and moss. Baskets woven from reeds or bark and coated with pitch to keep out moisture. They're all clustered near a corner of the cave, arranged neatly against a rock wall. This is the pantry, not an accident. It's placed far from the fire to prevent spoilage, but close enough that no one has to freeze to access it. You watch someone unstopper a horn filled with melted animal fat, now thick and golden. He dips a piece of jerky into it like it's sauce and pops it into his mouth. Protein and calories in one bite. Gourmet by Ice Age standards. You can't help but think about how carefully this food was rationed. This is the season of not dying, and that means every scrap matters. Every bite is accounted for. The idea of overeating doesn't exist, not because they're noble or restrained, but because survival has carved away indulgence. You eat enough to stay alive. And you share enough to keep everyone else alive with you. Still, even here there's evidence of flavour being a consideration. You notice dried herbs, a few shriveled leaves bundled together and tucked into a storage pouch. Probably used to flavour meat or make a bitter drink. Someone cared enough to add taste to survival. That's a luxury we often take for granted now, but back then it was a mark of humanity. You lean back and feel the warmth of the fire settling back into your limbs. The jerky still sits heavy in your gut, but it's a good weight, a promising one, the kind that tells your body it has just enough fuel to keep going, maybe not all day, maybe not even through the night, but for now you'll make it, and that's the Ice Age promise. You never feel full, just fed enough. And that's enough. A sharp, sudden sound breaks the rhythm of chewing, short, high-pitched, and unmistakable. Someone's farted, loudly. At first there's silence, then a snort, then a soft laugh that grows contagious, spreading like ripples through the huddle of half-awake cave dwellers. A few groggy heads turn, one person groans and buries their face deeper into a fur bundle, and someone else mutters something that sounds suspiciously like prehistoric trash talk. You weren't expecting to laugh in a place like this, but here you are, giggling with your mouth half full of jerky. Yeah, you can survive the Ice Age, but you're not escaping the universal truth. Even 30,000 years ago, people found flatulence funny. You lie back, arms behind your head, staring up at the shadow-dappled ceiling. The warmth of breakfast still lingers in your belly, and now you're realizing just how human this place is. Not just in the grand, heroic sense of we survived extinction, but in the petty, smelly, social sense of Someone has been quietly farting under this hide pile all night. And not a soul mentioned it until it became absolutely impossible to ignore. Let's get real. This cave, it stinks. The air is thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, fur soaked in sweat, burnt wood, stale animal fat, and that peculiar sour smell of breath left to ferment in sleep. Underneath it all is a bass note of smoke and something faintly gamey. You're living in a crowded, enclosed stone room with at least a dozen other people who've been wearing the same clothes for weeks. There's no ventilation beyond a chimney-sized fissure in the ceiling, and the occasional gust sneaking through the hide-covered doorway. It's basically a prehistoric locker room with a fireplace. And still it works. There's an odd comfort in the stink. It's familiar, even protective. Everyone in here smells the same way, more or less, which makes the cave feel cohesive. It's hard to explain, but in this kind of environment, smell isn't just a sense, it's a social glue. You can tell who's near you, who just walked past, who's not in the room anymore. Your nose becomes an early warning system and a roll call all in one. The people who study this stuff, yes, there are people who study prehistoric body odour, welcome to anthropology, argue that scent probably played a bigger role in social bonding than we realise. You weren't just recognised by your face or voice, you had a smell print, a specific scent that marked you as one of the group. Your bedding smelled like you. Your child, your mate, your tools, your fur wrap, all of it carried the same molecular signature. And if someone smelled wrong, that was danger. You glance around the room and consider this. Everyone's sprawled in varying degrees of alertness and sleep. A couple of people are whispering near the wall. Someone's picking at their teeth with a sliver of bone. Another person sneezes, once, twice, loudly, and no one blesses them, obviously, because there are no blessings yet. But the moment has a familiar rhythm. It feels like family, even though none of these people know what electricity is. And yes, the farting continues. One of the kids giggles again and gets shushed by a nearby adult, but the smirk on her face says she's not sorry. Someone tosses a scrap of hide in her direction like a soft scolding. It lands with their plap and makes her laugh harder. It's ridiculous and also perfect. In a space like this, where you're sleeping practically on top of each other, the line between privacy and public life is blurry. Everyone sees everything. You sleep together, eat together, pass gas together. There are no secrets in the cave, only moments no one's in the mood to comment on. And sure, not every moment is funny. You catch a glimpse of someone sitting near the back wall, alone, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Maybe they're sick, maybe grieving, or maybe just overwhelmed by the weight of the season. But even they aren't isolated. A few minutes pass and someone quietly brings over a warmed stone wrapped in hide and places it beside them. No words, just action. That's how empathy works here. Quietly, practically, without asking for anything in return. The cave settles again, the laughter fades. Someone clears their throat and spits into the fire. The scent of smoke deepens. And that smell, you notice it again. The thick, constant undercurrent of people, of meat and smoke and skin and, yes, body odour. But the longer you're here, the more it all blurs together into something not unpleasant, just real. It becomes the smell of being alive, and it's not just people either. The hides you sleep under. They used to be walking around, breathing, sweating, bleeding. They carry their own scent memory. The grass beneath the hides was gathered in summer, fragrant then, now muted, but still with a faint whiff of earth. Even the tools smell. The flint knives, the sinew-wrapped spears, the woven baskets, everything is steeped in the scent of use and purpose. There's a theory, kind of a fringe one but worth mentioning, that prehistoric people might have used scent intentionally to communicate. Certain herbs for calming, for healing, even for marking territory. You remember the bundle of dried leaves you saw near the food storage earlier? You thought it was for flavour, but maybe it was also for something else. Maybe someone burned it occasionally just to reset the smellscape. Or maybe they just liked the scent of crushed spruce needles in a cave full of wet fur and farts. You inhale deeply through your nose, brave soul that you are. And the layers hit you. Smoke, ash, earth, grease, sweat, leather, the ghost of pine. It's all there, woven into one aromatic signature that tells your brain, this is home now. You lie back again, hands folded on your stomach, and let the sounds return. Someone yawns, someone coughs, and someone's stomach growls audibly. A moment later, a distant plap. The sound of someone slapping their belly in amusement. A brief chuckle, then stillness. You wonder if they are always like this, even in the summer. or if the closeness of winter makes people sillier, more tolerant, more forgiving. When everyone is forced into the same sleeping bag of survival, even the gross parts become shared currency. You reach over and adjust your hide, pulling it up to your chin. It smells like everything else, familiar, musty, human. You close your eyes and let it settle over you like a second skin. No one's clean here, but no one's alone either. You must have fallen asleep again, because the next thing you hear is a sound like distant thunder. Not outside, inside the cave. Deep, repetitive, rhythmic. It rolls through the space, echoes off the stone, and sinks straight into your chest. You lift your head, expecting something dramatic, a ritual, maybe a gathering, but no, it's just someone snoring loudly. It's the old man in the corner, curled under a massive fur that looks like it was once a bear. His mouth hangs open, his chest rises and falls like a bellows, and every few seconds he releases another seismic snore that shakes the air like a low drumbeat. The cave doesn't react. No one stirs. No one tells him to shut up. This is normal. Part of the night music. You settle back into your bedding, eyes barely open, listening to the prehistoric symphony. Fire crackle, occasional cough, one snoring elder, and the soft rustle of fur as someone shifts in their sleep. The snoring continues, unrelenting. You wonder how no one is complaining. Back home, this kind of sound would have triggered exile, or at least a couch night. But here, it's background noise, soothing in a strange way. It means someone is alive, breathing deeply, resting fully, and more importantly, it means you're safe enough to sleep this deep. That's no small thing. Snoring is the heartbeat of the cave, and he's not the only one. As your ears adjust, you pick up a dozen tiny versions of the same song, high-pitched baby snores, nasal adolescent wheezes, the occasional soft whistle from someone whose sinuses are clearly rebelling against the smoky air. You wonder if prehistoric people thought about snoring at all, if it ever annoyed them, or if they just accepted it as part of the package deal of being human. There's actually some scholarly debate about this. One theory says loud snorers might have served a protective purpose, unintentionally of course. The constant sound could have signalled to animals outside that the cave was full, alive and alert. No predator wants to walk into a cave echoing with the sound of a dozen mammal-sized threats. Others think snoring was a liability, a giveaway. If you're trying not to attract saber-toothed cats, maybe sounding like a dying bison every night isn't ideal. Still, the evidence suggests that our ancestors didn't make a fuss about it. And how could they? With no pillows, no nasal strips, and no white noise machines, what were you going to do? Smack someone with a mammoth femur every time they snored too loud? No, you just dealt with it. And maybe, eventually, you stopped hearing it altogether. You roll onto your side and press your cheek into the fur beneath you. It's warm from your body heat, a little damp, a little scratchy. You adjust the edge of the hide so it covers your ear, but of course that just makes the snoring louder, like cupping a seashell to your head and hearing not the ocean but a prehistoric freight train breathing through its nose. And yet, you're not mad. In a strange way, the snoring is reassuring. You start to imagine the biology behind it, the way the muscles relax, the way the throat closes just slightly, the way the soft palate vibrates in the back of the mouth. This too is survival. This too is proof that the body still works. The old man gives a particularly heroic snore, long, wheezing, rising like a foghorn and ending in a moist snort. One of the children stirs, groans, and tosses a small fur in his direction. It lands on his shoulder. He doesn't notice. A few quiet laughs ripple through the group. Even in the Ice Age, you don't mess with a snorer. You just cover him and move on. You sit up briefly, stretching your spine, and look around the cave. The light is low again. Embers now, more than fickle, glowing red and orange in soft, pulsing rhythm. Shadows pool in the corners. The ceiling vanishes into darkness, but every now and then the light catches the glint of something. A flint blade, a damp piece of bone, the whites of someone's eyes blinking open. You make eye contact with a woman nearby, half awake. She raises an eyebrow in the direction of the snoring. You shrug, she smirks, and rolls over, tugging her bedding up to her ears. A shared moment, brief and wordless, a tiny flicker of camaraderie in the middle of the long night. Because really, that's what this all is, a shared experience. You're not just surviving next to each other, you're surviving with each other. Your rhythms sync, your sleep overlaps. Your moods pass from person to person like warmth from body to body. One person laughs and the cave lifts. One person coughs and heads turn in concern. One person snores and somehow the whole group adjusts. It's not just about endurance, it's about harmony. You lie back again and close your eyes, listening. This time you let the snoring wash over you. You imagine it as part of the cave itself, like the low hum of geothermal vents, or the gentle churn of a distant ocean. Each breath is a drumbeat. Each exhale a reminder that people have been sleeping like this for thousands upon thousands of years. No walls, no beds, just furs, fire, and the sound of each other. There's something beautiful in that. Something that makes the darkness feel less cruel. The snore echoes again, deeper this time, slower, and you feel your own breathing start to match it involuntarily. It's like you're being rocked to sleep by the body of the world itself. You nestle deeper into your bedding. The fur is soft against your cheek now, warm from your breath. The laughter has faded. The cave is quiet again, save for that one slow, constant thunder. Sleep finds you, not in silence, but in the comforting noise of the living. You're dreaming. At least you think you are. It's hard to tell. There's no plot, no logic, just a flickering vision of massive jaws, impossibly wide, lined with teeth the size of your fingers. A bear, maybe, but not the kind you've seen in documentaries. This one's ancient, covered in thick, mottled fur, with eyes that shine not like an animal's, but like something that remembers you. You stumble backward in the dream, heart hammering, but there's nowhere to run. The cave walls are too tight, the shadows too deep. Then you wake, but barely. You're still half in that dream place, heart thumping louder than you want to admit. It's dark in the cave. The fire has died down to its last coals, little more than a soft red pulse in the centre of the room. Around you, bodies shift and breathe, and for a few disorienting moments you think you might still be dreaming. The bear was so vivid. The memory of it is sticky. You can almost feel its breath. You sit up slowly, pulling the hide tighter around your shoulders, and glance toward the cave wall. In the dim ember glow light, you can just make out the shapes painted there. Animals, clawed feet, massive shoulders, open mouths, bears for sure, maybe wolves. Maybe both. One painting shows a huge bear standing upright, its form almost humanoid. At first glance it looks like a monster. A second glance, a god? You've seen cave art before, but something about this particular depiction makes the hair on your neck rise. It's not just art, it's placement. This bear is drawn high on the wall, far from the other animals, as if lifted above them. Revered, maybe. Feared, definitely. Its eyes are marked with black pigment that drips down like tears or blood. And then you notice what's beneath it. A row of small, neatly stacked bones. Arranged carefully, not tossed or forgotten. Some are long, thin, ribs maybe. Others are small, delicate, fingers, no, claws. You lean closer and see a skull tucked into the cluster. Flattened, broad-skulled, the snout crushed inward. A bear cub's skull, cleaned and placed with the quiet, unsettling care. Now you're wide awake. There's debate, of course, about what this means. Some archaeologists argue these bone piles are nothing more than refuse, remains of meals, tossed aside and forgotten. Others insist they're ceremonial, offerings, maybe even the remnants of an early form of worship. One theory goes even deeper, that ancient humans held cave bears as sacred creatures, perhaps even totems or spirit guides. After all, they shared the same spaces, competed for the same caves. Sometimes the humans won. Sometimes the bears did. And then there are those who say it's neither worship nor waste, that it's simply memory, a way to mark an encounter that left a deep scar, or a deep awe. You stare at the skull a moment longer, then glance around. A few others are awake now, quietly tending to the fire, or stretching stiff limbs. One woman sits facing the bare wall, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap. She isn't looking at the bones, she's looking at the bear painting, watching it like it's about to move, like she's waiting for something. Your mind drifts again. Back to your dream, and you wonder, was that just a dream? Or was it one of those dreams? The kind that means something. The kind that carries weight. You've heard the stories, well, not you specifically, but humans in general. The legends passed down about dreams being messages from ancestors or warnings from spirits. For some cultures, past and present, bears are seen as boundary walkers, creatures that live between life and death, between worlds. They hibernate, disappear into the dark, and re-emerge like they have returned from the grave. Sleepwalkers of the wild, they hold knowledge, they cross thresholds. You touch your chest, where your heartbeat is finally beginning to slow, and you wonder what your brain was trying to say with all those teeth and shadows. Or maybe it wasn't your brain at all. Maybe it was the cave. After all, this cave existed before people, before fire, before even language. It was shaped by time, carved by water, home to creatures older than your imagination. When humans finally arrived, the cave didn't suddenly become theirs, they just moved in. Found a spot that was dry and warm and less dangerous than outside. But the cave remembers. That's why the bones are still here. That's why the bear on the wall hasn't faded completely. The debate continues, even now. Are these artifacts part of a religion? A proto-religion? Early animism? Or just stories? One school of thought insists these were sacred sites, temples hidden in rock, where only the initiated could enter. Another group pushes back, arguing that we're seeing significance where there was only survival. That maybe the paintings were made by bored teenagers. Maybe the bear skull was left there because it didn't rot as fast as the rest of the carcass. Maybe we're looking for gods where there were just groceries. But you're not so sure. Because here, now, in this flickering dark, the line between survival and spirituality gets thin. You're warm, yes. You're fed. But you're also wrapped in stories, surrounded by symbols, haunted by images that someone long before you thought were worth carving into stone. And as you sit quietly by the wall, eyes drifting again toward that painted bear, you start to understand something, not as fact, but as a feeling. These people didn't separate the sacred from the everyday. For them, everything was part of the same story, death and life, hunt and dream, fire and shadow. You don't need a church when your whole world is already whispering to you. You close your eyes again. The skull still sits there, small and pale. The woman still watches the wall, and the bear, both the real one in your dream and the painted one above, lingers, not gone, just waiting. You wake to a sharp itch crawling across the back of your neck, and for a second you think maybe a stray hair is tickling your skin. You reach up, scratch absently, and then scratch again. Harder this time. It's not just your neck now. It's your scalp, your side, your ankle. You sit up with a groggy groan and realise the truth, one that hits harder than the cold cave air. You've got bugs, tiny ones, persistent, unapologetic. You scratch harder, then check the inside of your fur wrap and see it. A speck, fast and determined, disappearing into the matted fibres, lice, possibly fleas, maybe both. Honestly, the prehistoric insect roster is more diverse than you'd hope. You glance around and realise you're not the only one twisting and shifting. Someone nearby is giving their calf a serious once-over, their nails leaving red streaks in the skin. Another person is slowly and methodically checking their child's scalp, picking through tangled hair like a meticulous bird searching for seeds. There's no judgment, no shame. This is just part of cave life. As normal as fire, hunger, and body odour. You're not being singled out, you're being inducted. These bugs live in the furs, in the seams of your hide bedding, in the woven grasses stuffed beneath you. They're as much a part of the community as anyone else, though significantly less helpful and way more annoying. You start scratching under your armpit, then your hip, then back to your scalp. It's a full-body concert now. You wonder if scratching has always been a shared human experience, one of the few things that transcend time, geography, and language. Turns out there's actual archaeological evidence of lice combs found at prehistoric sites carved from bone or antler. Which means, yes, even 20,000 years ago, someone got tired enough of the constant itching to invent a dedicated tool, and probably complained about it the whole time. You're scratching like you've got ants under your skin, and all you can think is, wow, this has been annoying people since forever. The kid across from you is actively chasing a flea across his wrist. You watch as he squashes it between two fingernails with a small triumphant grunt. He holds it up for someone to see, proud of his kill. Someone else offers him a dried root to chew on, a reward or just a coincidental snack, hard to tell. Either way, he grins, showing a gap where two teeth should be. You shift your attention to your bedding, lifting the edge of the fur and examining the underside. There they are. Tiny black specks, some moving, some not. You grimace but feel strangely calm about it. It's gross, sure, but no more surprising than stepping into snow and feeling cold. Of course these furs are infested. They're stitched together from animals that were once alive, and very likely already carrying passengers of their own. A few members of the group are already handling it in their own quiet way. One woman has taken her bedding outside, shaking it in the snow with practiced intensity. The cold kills some of the bugs, or at least stuns them. She beats the hide against a flat rock, then drapes it carefully on a branch wedged into the snowbank. It'll freeze for an hour or two, then come back in cleaner, less itchy. Temporary relief, but still worth the effort. Another person near the fire uses a stick to hold a fur above the flames, rotating it slowly, letting the heat and smoke work together. Too close and the hide will scorch, too far and the bugs laugh and multiply. But the method works well enough. The air begins to carry that specific aroma. Singed fur mixed with burning insect oil. The smell of pest control, Paleolithic edition. Some even rub ash into their hair and onto their skin, which creates a fine gritty layer that the bugs seem to dislike. It's not comfortable, but it creates a barrier. You watch someone rub ash into their scalp with both hands, then shake out the excess like they're dusting off their soul. You take note. Maybe you'll try it next. The scholarly world has theories about this kind of thing. Some believe bug management influenced grooming habits, tool development, and even social bonding. Sitting in pairs, checking each other's hair, picking and combing. These weren't just hygiene routines. They were acts of care, the kind of intimate labour that creates trust. You can't get much closer to someone than when you're elbow deep in their matted hair hunting for tiny invaders. Romantic, maybe not, but deeply human, absolutely boy. And it makes you think how much of ancient survival came down to simply tolerating discomfort. Modern life trains you to expect convenience. Bug bites? There's spray for that. Dirty bedding? Toss it in a washing machine. Here, none of that exists. The only real weapon you have is persistence. Keep scratching, keep picking, keep shaking out hides and pretending that the bugs aren't crawling back the minute you stop. You feel a tickle along your forearm and swat at it instinctively. Another little critter, gone in a smear. You sigh. Your nails are already dirty, your skin's starting to show tiny welts. There's a pile of moss in the corner, soaked with something pungent. Maybe someone tried making a repellent out of herbs and animal fat. You scoop a bit up and rub it along your neck. It doesn't smell great, but it masks your own scent, and the bugs seem less enthusiastic. You lie back down, resigned but oddly okay with the situation. You scratch gently at your shoulder, eyes half closed. The itch doesn't go away completely, but your body adapts. Your skin toughens. You become part of the cave in a new, grimy way. And as you drift back into that light, hazy half-sleep, you start to imagine Lysa's ancient roommates. Annoying, ever present, but included in the rent. You start wondering if anyone ever painted them on the cave walls. Probably not, but they deserve a cameo. After all, they've been here the whole time. You're somewhere between scratching your ankle and debating whether to rub more mystery moss on your scalp when a new sound breaks through the low hum of the cave. A soft but steady rhythm, like a heartbeat made audible. It starts with a single thump, slow and deliberate. Then another, and another. Not loud enough to startle, but loud enough to pull your attention away from your itchy skin. Everyone else hears it too. Heads lift, eyes adjust. Even the kids pause their chewing and shuffling. The cave shifts its breathing. The sound is coming from the back, from the darkest corner, where the shadows don't flicker but settle in thick, unmoving layers. Someone's crouched near the wall, cross-legged, their spine unnaturally straight. You hadn't even noticed them there before. Now they're very much awake and very much doing something. In their hands, a narrow drum, if you can even call it that, made from a stretched piece of hide lashed over a hollowed log or perhaps a section of curved bone. It's old, everything in here is old, but this feels older than everything else. They strike it again, thump, with a stick wrapped in something soft. Fur, moss? Hard to tell. The rhythm is slow, intentional, like a call to something, or someone. The others don't react with surprise. A few even close their eyes. You realise this isn't random. It's familiar, expected. You glance back toward the fire, now glowing warmly again thanks to a recent feeding. A few coals have been shifted, illuminating the cave's centre. Around it, people begin to adjust their positions, not standing, not sitting, straighter but settling. Like the way you might lean forward in a movie theatre when the good part starts. Something is happening. The drumming quickens slightly, barely perceptible unless you're paying attention. You are. Then, without warning, the figure begins to hum. Low, rough, almost a growl. It starts in their throat and rolls out in a vibrating tone. Not quite music, but not just noise either. You feel it more than hear it, like a bone-deep echo resonating in your ribcage. The cave amplifies it, makes it seem like it's coming from the walls themselves. You glance around, half expecting something to step out of the stone. What you're witnessing, you realise, is some kind of ritual, or trance, or maybe something else entirely. Call it a prehistoric rave, minus the glow sticks and thumping bass. Just firelight, breath, and rhythm. It's not performance, it's participation. The person making the sound isn't showing off. They're going somewhere inward, and everyone else is following. The sound changes. The hum becomes a chant, broken syllables punctuated by short bursts of breath. You don't recognise the words, but they feel like language, like something that was once understood. Some scholars think these kinds of rituals were the beginnings of organised religion. Others believe they were healing ceremonies, early forms of therapy through sound and rhythm. And then there's the fringe crowd, the ones who think these trances were a way to communicate with something beyond the physical. Not just spirits or ancestors, but the animals themselves. You remember the bear from earlier. The painting, the bones, the dream. It all clicks. This isn't a performance, it's communion. You lean forward slightly, your itchy scalp forgotten, and watch as the figure sways gently. Their eyes are closed now and their voice climbs, not in pitch, but in intensity. You feel your heart beat in time with the drum. It's not loud, but it moves something in you, something ancient, something you didn't know was still there. A few others have joined in now, adding their own low hums to the chorus. Not singing, not harmony, just layers, texture. Some clap softly, hand striking thighs or fur bundles. A child claps too, a little off beat, but no one corrects him. He's part of it now. So are you. It's hard to explain what happens next. The sound builds, not loud, not wild, but thick. Like fog in your ears. Your skin prickles. You can't tell if your eyes are open or closed. You smell smoke, ash, sweat. Maybe blood, or maybe that's just your imagination running wild. The shadows on the cave walls begin to ripple. Not because the fire is moving, but because something in your mind is. You're not hallucinating, not really. But you're different, lighter, detached. The sound continues, steady, insistent. And then, silence. It happens all at once. The drum stops. The chant ends mid-word. The cave exhales. You blink and come back to yourself, not sure how long you've been floating in that sound. Around you, the others are quiet too. One person wipes tears from their cheeks. Another just sits, breathing slowly, staring into the fire like it holds all the answers they've ever wanted. The drummer opens their eyes. They look drained, or maybe transformed. Their face is calm, expressionless, like they've just returned from someplace far away. They place the drum gently beside them, then lie down, curling under a thin fur like nothing happened. No applause, no nods, no commentary. Just silence. And you feel it. The heaviness in the room has shifted. The dream you were trapped in earlier, that heaviness in your chest from the bear, it's eased. Not gone, but softened. Like someone acknowledged it and took a little piece of it away. There's a theory that early humans used rhythm to process trauma. Not in a conscious, therapeutic sense, but biologically, through the nervous system. The heartbeat, the breath, the vibration, all syncing to give the body permission to relax, to let go, to make space for something else. Whatever just happened, you feel it too. You settle back into your bedding. The bugs are still here, the smoke still stings, but something inside you is quieter now, less tangled, like a knot has been loosened. The fire crackles softly. Someone stirs a pot near the edge of the coals. A new rhythm begins. Not a drumbeat, but the gentle clatter of stone on stone, the scraping of hide, the small symphony of survival. The shaman, if that's what they are, sleeps now. Their breathing is deep, still, dreamless maybe. And you, with your skin still itching, your brain still humming, and your thoughts moving a little slower than before, lie back down. Whatever just happened wasn't meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt, and you did. You wake to the quiet murmur of movement, soft shuffling, a few low voices, the occasional cough. The air has shifted again, subtly, and it takes you a moment to realise why. It's colder. Noticeably so, your nose poking out from beneath your hide stings like it's been dipped in frost. The embers in the fire pit are down to their last dull breaths, and the warmth they once radiated now clings only to the few lucky stones closest to the centre. The chill crawls along the floor like a clever little predator, seeking out bare skin and exposed toes. Speaking of toes, yours are frozen, not just cold but betrayed. They curled into themselves sometime during the night in protest and now lie there like pale, angry shrimp. You wiggle them, trying to coax back some feeling, basic, and then try again with more urgency. One foot moves, the other. Not so much. It's not panic time yet, but it's getting close to it. Around you, others are having similar issues. You hear someone groaning softly, pulling their legs tighter under their bedding. A child lets out a whimper, tiny, pathetic cold, and their mother scoops them closer, tucking them against her chest with the same instinct you see in every species when winter gets serious. Everyone is shifting, bundling, piling. This is the moment in the night, or maybe it's the dead of early morning, who knows, when the cold makes its real move. But here's where things get weirdly beautiful. Without a word, one of the older boys, maybe 15, maybe 17, all elbows and confidence, kicks off his own fur and grabs a pair of ember-warmed stones from near the fire. He wraps them in thick, charred cloth and places them carefully into the communal bedding circle, sliding them near the feet of an elder who hasn't moved in a while. Another person follows his lead and starts rearranging the hides like a living, breathing patchwork quilt. Soon half the cave is helping adjust things, shifting the bodies of the sleeping, rolling over the young ones who've kicked off their covers in dreams. They're not speaking, just doing. You, still wrestling with your frozen foot, suddenly feel another pair of legs brush against yours. A kid, could be the same one who threw moss at the snorer earlier, has wiggled their way over and casually planted their tiny, toasty feet against your shins. At first, you're alarmed. Then, blessed warmth, you nearly cry. Welcome to prehistoric foot piling. It's not an official technique, but it should be. These people have mastered the subtle art of shared warmth. Piling hides is one thing, but piling people, that's next level thermoregulation. Feet find feet, backs press into bellies, arms wrapped around whoever's closest. Not out of affection necessarily, but out of strategy. There's no such thing as personal space when it's between you and frostbite. And the math checks out. Body heat in this context is currency. One adult body at rest puts out about 100 watts of heat. Multiply that by 10 people huddled close, and you're looking at enough energy to fend off even the most aggressive winter drafts, at least inside the circle. It's like being inside a human battery pack wrapped in woolly rhino. The foot pile grows. You feel it happening organically, like ants building a bridge out of instinct. People nudge closer. The cave rearranges itself into a tangle of limbs and hides. You end up with someone's knee under your ribs, a small elbow nestled into your side, and your own hand awkwardly holding someone's foot like a wayward baked potato. It should feel ridiculous. It should feel invasive. But instead, it just feels safe. This is how you survive the kind of cold that has no mercy. Not with strength, not even with fire, but with proximity. With the shared agreement that no one freezes alone. And here's the funny thing, science backs this up. Shared sleeping, especially in cold environments, dramatically improves warmth retention and sleep efficiency. Not to mention emotional regulation. There's something in the brain that eases when you're near others, when you feel the predictable rise and fall of someone else's breath. That subconscious comfort reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, and helps the body relax more fully, even when you're pressed into a stranger's armpit under a bear hide. You sigh and let your body go limp into the tangle. The warmth is returning to your limbs like slow syrup. Your once angry toes are forgiving you, twitching gently in the shared heat. And just as you're about to drift off again, someone starts snoring. Not the old man this time, a new contender. Higher pitched, nasal. You hear someone groan and toss a fur over their face in protest. Still no one moves away, because even a snorer is warm. You glance over and see the fire being coaxed back to life. A woman, grizzled, silent, wearing more beads than clothing, has placed a handful of kindling and a bit of dried moss onto the coals. She blows gently, cheeks puffed, breath curling into the darkness. The moss catches, glows, then flares. Just like that, the cave regains its glow, a dim golden pulse that outlines the footpile like a mythic painting. You lie still, soaking it in. Somewhere far away the wind howls. It scrapes across the rocks outside like claws looking for purchase. But in here, there's warmth. In here there are layers of fur, of breath, of memory, and underneath it all the gentle press of another person's foot pressed right against yours, not by accident, but by design. You're jolted awake by a cough, not yours, but close enough to feel like it. It's dry, hacking, relentless, the kind that pulls at the throat and rattles the ribs. You lift your head and see the source, an older woman, bundled in fur and sitting upright, her body hunched as she coughs into her hands. Her breath fogs in the cold air. Every few seconds she tries to stop, but the coughing doubles back on her, shaking her entire frame. You can hear the others stirring now. Not alarmed exactly, but alert. This isn't a new sound, it's just louder now. You watch as someone, probably her daughter, though it's impossible to say for sure in a place where relationships aren't narrated, gently moves to her side. She has a bundle in her arms, wrapped in leather and tied with thin sinew. She opens it and removes a handful of dried herbs and what looks like moss, steeped in something dark and sticky. She scoops some into a small carved bowl, adds snow from a container near the fire, and sets it close to the embers, letting it melt and warm. No words pass between them, not needed. You shift your weight and realise how quiet the cave has gotten. Even the kids, who are usually making weird noises or inventing reasons to slap each other, are still, watching, listening. Because in this time, in this world, a cough can mean everything. It could be nothing, or it could be the beginning of the end. The air inside the cave isn't exactly fresh. With the fire burning, the hides sealed tight, and 24 people exhaling all night, the oxygen levels are low and the moisture is high. Perfect conditions for illness. And once it starts spreading, there's nowhere for it to go but through the group. You glance around and notice more signs. A boy near the back wiping his nose on his sleeve, over and over. A man with watery eyes and flushed cheeks, turning his face away to sneeze into his hands. The evidence is everywhere. This is what prehistoric sickness looks like. Not a dramatic plague sweeping through the population, just a slow creeping malaise that makes everything harder. There's no medicine here, not in the way you're used to thinking of it. No antibiotics, no pills, no magic syrup. But there is care and knowledge. Passed down not by textbooks but by survival, by watching, testing, remembering. The woman tending the coughing elder stirs the warm mixture and offers it in small sips. The elder drinks it slowly between coughing fits. Her hands shake, but she holds the bowl steady. There's a kind of quiet dignity in it, like she's done this before and knows the rhythm of it. This is healthcare, Ice Age style. It's rough, imprecise, and fully dependent on what the land provides and what the group can manage. Warm stones, herbal teas, constant monitoring, gentle touch. You think about how often modern medicine relies on isolation, quarantine, sterile rooms, masked doctors. Here it's the opposite. You stay close. Not because it's medically ideal, but because abandonment kills faster than infection. The risk of contagion is constant, but the risk of loneliness, that's worse. And that's something scholars debate even now. How did ancient humans handle the sick? Did they leave them behind when the burden became too great? Or did they adapt their lives to care for them? The evidence suggests both. Some burial sites show signs of long-term illness, healed bones, deformed joints, suggesting that people lived for years with chronic issues, which means someone was helping them live, feeding them, carrying them, keeping them warm. You look again at the woman with the cough. Her eyes are closed now, the bowl nearly empty, her body swaying gently as the warmth takes hold. The group doesn't look away. No one turns their back on her. In fact, one of the children reaches out and touches the hem of her fur wrap as if to say, "I see you." And that's the heart of it, isn't it? Visibility. In the Ice Age, being seen, being known, might be the only thing standing between you and the cold void outside. Illness isolates in the body, but the group refuses to let it isolate the person. You might be coughing your lungs out, but you're still in the circle, still wrapped in shared heat and shared attention. A man near the fire begins to prepare something else, grinding a dried root against a stone with a rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape. The smell hits you quickly, sharp, bitter, maybe medicinal. He scoops it into another bowl and adds snow, just like the woman did earlier. These aren't healers in the professional sense. They're community doctors, guided by repetition and memory. When someone coughs like this, we use this root. That kind of logic. Not perfect, but tested. There's a fringe theory floating around in anthropological circles, well, fringe only because it's unprovable, that humans survived the Ice Age not because of tools or language or fire, but because of caregiving. The theory goes like this. When one person falls, another picks them up. Not out of moral obligation, but out of instinct. Out of the hardwired knowledge that your survival is tied to theirs. You keep the weak alive because someday you'll be the weak one. And when that moment comes, you'll want someone next to you with a warm drink and a steady hand. The elder coughs again, but softer this time. The worst of the fit has passed. She leans against the cave wall, her face pale but calm. The woman beside her presses a warmed hide against her back, cushioning the stone. They sit in silence, breathing together. You lean back and pull your own fur tighter, suddenly more aware of your lungs. You take a slow breath, testing the edges of your ribcage. All clear, for now, but you know how fast that can change. The fire crackles. A handful of people return to sleep. The noise resumes slowly, like a radio turning back up after a moment of static. Someone hums, a kid sneezes, a man chuckles at a quiet joke, and the cave resets. The sickness hasn't left, but neither has the warmth. And in this world, that might be the best medicine there is. You're half asleep again, trying to ignore the creeping cold returning to your fingers when someone stirs beside the fire. A young woman, probably late teens, her hair tied back in a messy knot with what looks like braided sinew, stands and carefully selects a few stones from a pile off to the side. They are small, round and worn smooth. River stones, maybe. You've seen them before, stacked neatly in a shallow bowl near the hearth, but hadn't thought much of them. Just more cave stuff, but now she's carrying them like they're sacred, cradling them in her hands like tiny sleeping animals. She moves with care, crouching beside the fire and sliding the stones into the glowing embers. Not directly into the flame, but close enough that they'll start to absorb heat. Then she sits back and waits, warming her hands while she watches the stones begin to darken, their surface slowly turning from dull grey to a faint toasty brown. No one says anything. No one asks what she's doing, because everyone already knows. You're watching the birth of the prehistoric hot water bottle. Once the stones are heated, just enough to be warm, not hot enough to burn, she removes them using a bit of hide as a mitt. She places each one gently onto a square of fur, folds it over, then wraps the bundle tightly with a cord made of twisted grass. You can see the steam rising from the fabric. It smells faintly like scorched hair and pine resin. She walks the bundle over to where a small child is curled up, shivering in their sleep, and slips the wrapped stone under the furs, nestling it by the child's stomach. The kid doesn't wake, but you can see their body slowly uncurl as the warmth spreads. You had no idea they had this kind of tech. It's simple, brilliant, and deeply human. Someone figured out a long time ago that stones hold heat far better than fur alone. You just had to get the balance right. Not so hot they burn, not so cool they lose their purpose. It's a skill passed down, probably through 100 winters. You don't write this stuff down, you show it, over and over until it becomes instinct. The woman returns to the fire and prepares more stones, this time making 2 bundles. One she keeps for herself, slipping it under her own bedding as she settles back into place. The other she gives to a thin, coughing elder near the wall, the same one who had the herbal tea earlier. He accepts it without a word, presses it against his chest, and closes his eyes. And just like that, the entire temperature of the cave feels different. Not physically, necessarily. The walls are still cold, the air still damp, but emotionally. There's something deeply comforting about watching a group of people take warmth into their own hands, literally. No one's waiting for a see or sus. No one's begging the fire to do more. They're making tools out of what's available, making warmth portable, making care tangible. This isn't just about comfort. This is survival logistics. In the dead of winter, keeping body temperature stable can mean the difference between waking up or not. Hypothermia doesn't need to be dramatic, it just needs enough time and silence. A few degrees, a few bad hours, and that's it. So heating stones becomes a ritual, a system, a defense. You begin to notice the routine now. Someone stirs the fire, someone else turns the stones. A third person checks the wrapped bundles from earlier, feeling them with the back of their hand to make sure they're not too cool yet. There's no schedule or no roster, just observation and action. You think about how modern life loves hierarchy, chains of command. But here, leadership is fluid. Whoever notices the need fills it. You shift and decide to try it yourself. You crawl over to the stone pile, pick out one that looks promising and place it near the embers. It's heavier than you expected. You wonder where it came from, how far someone had to carry it. It wasn't just lying around in the cave, that's for sure. It would have been chosen for this purpose, dragged here on purpose. Someone long ago decided it was worth the trouble. As it heats, you wait. You mimic what you saw the others do. Let the stone darken, let it absorb the fire's energy. Then pour. Carefully, you wrap it in a scrap of fur, one you've been using as a makeshift pillow. You nestle the bundle near your chest as you lie down, and instantly your ribs feel like they've been kissed by sunlight. It's not dramatic, just steady, soothing. The warmth radiates through the fabric, sinking into your skin, deeper, into the muscle. It spreads like trust. You find yourself exhaling fully for the first time in what feels like hours. That tight coil in your spine, the one that's been braced against the cold, begins to unwind. And just like that, you understand why they do it. The fire can't be everywhere, but the stones can, and they hold stories. You can feel it. Not literal stories, not carved symbols or etched words, but time. They've been handled, passed around, dropped, heated, cooled, wrapped, unwrapped. These stones have served more people than you can count. Every winter they're pulled out. Every winter someone new learns how to use them. It's a legacy, but it doesn't shout. It just radiates. There's even a theory, again one of those fringe ones, that some ancient communities may have developed early forms of hot stone therapy. Not for spa days, but for joint pain, muscle tension, even childbirth. Stones warmed, placed along the spine or belly, accompanied by rhythmic pressure. It's sculptive, sure. But after one night with a hot rock under your blanket, you're ready to believe in anything. The fire shifts behind you, sending a soft crackle into the quiet. Around you, people are settling again, furs rustling, breaths slowing. You adjust your bundle, pulling it tighter, and close your eyes. This time, when you drift off, you dream not of cold or bears or itchy skin, but of fire-warm river stones glowing in the dark, small suns passed from hand to hand. And even in your sleep, you can still feel the heat. You wake with something gritty in your eyes, ash maybe, or just sleep crust with a prehistoric flare, and when you blink it away, your gaze drifts upward. The fire is still glowing faintly, its heartbeat slow but steady, and the rest of the cave is shrouded in that eerie half-light where everything is shadows and suggestion. But above you something gleams. You squint. At first, you think it's just smoke residue or soot-stained stone catching the firelight. But then the light shifts, and the glimmer sharpens into shape. Dots, lines, scratches carved into the ceiling. Patterns, arranged not randomly but in clusters. You sit up a little straighter, ignoring the crick in your neck, and stare harder. It looks like a sky. Not a perfect one, not like what you'd see in a planetarium, but close enough. Constellations, or at least someone's version of them. Tiny holes pecked into the rock, some connected by faint lines. You can't help but trace one with your finger, a triangle maybe, or a warped version of Orion's belt. To your right another cluster, dots in a rough spiral. Above the fire a sweeping arc of scratches that might mimic the moon's path. Or maybe not. Maybe it's all wishful thinking. But the patterns are there. You're looking at Ice Age astronomy, or the earliest attempt at it. There's an ongoing debate about whether prehistoric people mapped the stars. Some scholars say absolutely they needed to track seasons, migrations, weather changes. Others insist it's projection, that we're seeing connections in the dots because our modern minds are obsessed with order. But then someone finds a carving like this, etched into a ceiling in a place where people slept, lived, dreamed, and it gets harder to write it off as random scratches, because who carves a spiral above their bed if it doesn't mean something? You lean back on your elbows, neck craned awkwardly, and wonder how often the people in this cave looked up. Did they lie awake at night and trace the shapes? Did they tell stories about the ones who lived among those stars? Did someone once point and say, "That one, see those three? That's the sleeping bison. When he's overhead, the rivers freeze." Maybe. Or maybe the carvings were just a distraction from boredom. Either way, the stars have followed you in here, and it makes sense. Outside, the sky is mostly invisible now, hidden behind clouds and snow, grey upon grey upon grey. The world is blank and brightless, but in here, they've preserved a version of the cosmos, a secret sky, one that burns steady, even when the real one disappears. You think about how, in the absence of windows or clocks, or even clear sunrise, the human mind starts reaching for orientation. The stars would have been one of the few consistent things, reliable, cyclical, always returning. Even in chaos, they were steady. When everything else changed, Herds, weather, sickness, loss, the sky remained. And maybe that was comforting, or powerful, or both. A quiet voice speaks near the fire, low and slow. A man, probably in his 30s, leans forward and points upward, saying something in a tone so calm it sounds like poetry. Others listen, some nodding, some simply staring upward, as if the ceiling might speak back. You catch the rhythm of his words, though not the meaning. It's a story, or maybe a memory passed down. He gestures again, drawing a line from one carved cluster to another. A migration, perhaps. A journey through stars mapped not for beauty but for survival. Somewhere behind you a child yawns and presses closer to an adult, eyes wide and unblinking. This is their bedtime story, not read from a page, but traced in smoke and stone. There's something so deeply human about it. This quiet act of looking up to make sense of things, even when the only sky you can see is carved into a ceiling by hands long gone. And then, just as suddenly, the man finishes. No applause, no closure, just the soft clatter of a stick dropped back into the firewood pile. Everyone settles again, as if the sky has been explained for now, and there's nothing left to say. You lie back down, eyes still locked upward. You wonder how many generations have added to these marks. Did someone start it one winter and another pick up where they left off the next? Were new stars added over time, discovered like old friends returning? Maybe the shapes changed as the stories did. Maybe each scratch holds a name, a warning, a promise. There's a growing belief among fringe archaeologists, people who spend too much time in caves, if such a thing exists, that some of these carvings were used as star calendars. Not for navigation in the open world, but for memory. If you know which star sits highest during the darkest part of winter, you might know how much longer the cold will last. If the crescent above that trio of dots aligns with a certain animal migration, you might know when to prepare your tools. In a world with no calendar, the stars might be the only clock you trust. And what better place to track them than from the ceiling above where you sleep? A few sparks rise from the fire, drawing your attention. They swirl upward like tiny meteors, flickering against the carved constellations before vanishing into the dark. You imagine someone long ago watching the same spark paths, thinking they were spirits or messages from the sky. Maybe they were. You shift slightly, pulling your fur tighter, and keep your eyes on the ceiling. You know the stars outside are still there, hidden by storm and season. But in here, they burn just as bright. Not because they're real, but because someone made them real. Etched them into permanence. Took the time in the middle of survival to carve light into stone. And isn't that the oldest story of all? Humanity carving light into the dark. You wake to the sound of laughter, sharp and genuine, cutting through the muffled quiet of the cave like a spark slicing darkness. Not the low chuckle of the elders or the quiet snorts exchanged over a fart. This is different. Higher, younger, mischievous. You roll over, squinting through the haze of smoke and sleep, and spot them, 3 children. Wide awake and full of exactly the kind of energy that should be illegal at this hour. They're playing, or causing problems, probably both. The smallest one, barely more than a toddler, is crawling across someone's leg, making little growling noises. Another child has stolen a strip of leftover hide and is whipping it back and forth like a tail, smacking the stone floor as he pretends to be a saber-toothed cat. The third, probably the ringleader, has a charcoal smear across her face and is trying to sneak up on the fire to steal something from a pouch placed too close to the coals. You can see her eyes shining with the kind of gleeful defiance that only children possess. The kind that says, yes, I know I'm being watched, and no, I'm not stopping. You expect someone to yell, to hiss at them, to lie back down, to let the grown-ups rest, but no one does. The adults watch from under half-lifted eyelids, amusement and fatigue blending together on their faces. One older woman mutters something that sounds suspiciously like they never sleep, and another responds with a grunt of agreement before rolling over and letting it go, because this is just what kids do, even in the Ice Age. They don't care that it's cold, they don't care that food is scarce or that the wind outside could flay the skin off your cheeks. They don't care that everyone's trying to get a few more hours of warmth before the fire needs tending again. They're not wired for stillness. They are warmth incarnate, little chaos furnaces with dirty fingernails and no sense of danger. And truth be told, it's kind of wonderful. You watch as one of the kids dares a step too close to the fire. Someone reaches out, lightning quick, and snags the back of her hide tunic, pulling her gently but firmly away from the heat. She yelps in protest, then immediately turns it into a dramatic death spiral, flopping onto the floor as if slain. The others fall over laughing. No one's angry, no one scolds. It's all part of the rhythm. There's something deeply human about it. This scene of small people being tiny, reckless versions of the larger ones. You realise this is probably the most important training they'll ever get. Not lectures, not hunting drills, not fire-making tutorials, but this. Watching, imitating, testing boundaries and getting their fingers gently slapped before they burn. And yes, waking everyone up. You shift and sit up slightly, rubbing the sleep from your face and glance around. The cave is still in that soft, early phase of waking. Not morning, not night, just not sleep. People yawn. Someone scratches their ribs with the kind of intensity that suggests a vivid dream. Someone else groans and stretches, joints popping. The fire gets a small revival, a few sticks added, a puff of breath, a little hiss of moisture being burned off. Meanwhile, the children have discovered a new game, throwing pebbles into an empty fur-lined basket. Points for distance, points deducted if you hit a sleeping adult. This rule clearly is not being enforced. You're not the only one amused. A few of the hunters are awake now, and one joins in the game, flicking a pebble in with surgical precision and pretending not to notice the cheers of admiration from his tinier audience. Another child tries to copy him, but her rock bounces wide and hits a sleeping elder. Everyone freezes. The elder opens one eye, raises an eyebrow, then throws the rock back. Laughter explodes. Even in a cave, even in a freezing world where danger sits just outside a thin curtain of hides, kids still find ways to play. And more importantly, the group lets them. Encourages it even. Not recklessly, there are limits, but with just enough space for mischief. And that's not just indulgence, it's strategy. Kids that play become adults who adapt, who invent, who learn. Anthropologists often point out how play is crucial to brain development, and not just in modern times. In prehistoric cultures, games served as practice for real-life tasks. Pebble tossing becomes spear throwing, tag becomes hunting or evasion. Role-playing animals becomes understanding their behaviour. So when a child growls like a cave lion and charges into someone's legs, they're not just being annoying. They're rehearsing survival. There's even some debate in the academic world about whether children were the first innovators. They had more free time, fewer responsibilities, and often a less rigid connection to traditional behaviour. If anyone was going to tie two bones together and call it a new tool, it was probably a bored 6-year-old stuck inside for the third straight week of snowstorms. You watch one of them now, carefully stacking rocks in a tower, then knocking it over, then rebuilding it again. The repetition is trance-like, meditative. You can see the shape of logic forming behind their eyes. Cause and effect, balance and structure. If this goes here, then that goes there. It's not just play, it's engineering. But even more than that, it's noise, movement, life. Because the truth is, in a place like this, silence can be dangerous. Too much quiet means too many heavy thoughts, too much cold creeping into the cracks. These children, smeared with ash, coveted in half-tied hides, hair wild and eyes wild air, they're not distractions, they're the spark. The proof that even here, life is being passed forward. Eventually a grown-up does step in, not to punish, but to guide. He pulls the children into a quieter part of the cave and starts drawing shapes in the dust with a stick. They follow, grumbling but interested. The pebble toss turns into a tracing game, spirals, animals. The child with the charcoal face adds 2 dots for eyes. The elder nods in approval. You lie back down, warmed by more than fire. You expected this world to be hard, brutal, cold, and it is. But you didn't expect it to laugh this much, and you definitely didn't expect it to laugh at 6 in the morning. The laughter fades gradually, like smoke thinning in the air, replaced by a different sound, one that sends a subtle ripple through the cave. You almost don't hear it at first, just a whisper against the hide-draped entrance. A soft crunch, a pause, another crunch, snow being stepped on, deliberately, slowly. Something or someone is outside, no one panics, not immediately. But the change in posture is instant and unmistakable. The playful energy vanishes. One of the adults near the fire straightens, eyes narrowing toward the cave's entrance. Another reaches, with practiced calm, for the spear leaning beside him. No shouting, no sudden movements, just a group-wide shift into awareness. You follow their gaze to the entrance where the hides sway ever so slightly, caught by wind. Or not wind. There's always a moment like this, just before the unknown reveals itself. The tight silence, the held breath, the calculation happening behind every pair of eyes. And you realise, again, that in this world, even one step beyond the safety of the cave puts you back in nature's game. It might be a friend, it might be an animal, it might be nothing at all. But you don't assume. You never assume. The crunching stops. Everyone waits. Then a shape moves behind the curtain. Tall, broad-shouldered, hunched against the cold. The flap is pushed aside just enough to let a person through, and the figure steps into view, wrapped in thick furs, snow crusted onto their boots, breath pouring from their mouth in heavy clouds. A hunter, one of theirs, clearly, but still everyone watches him like they don't recognise him yet. The outside changes people. It can freeze the warmth out of your face. Even your own family could step through that curtain and look like a ghost. He doesn't speak right away. He drops his pack near the fire and exhales so deeply it sounds like a sigh punched out of his lungs. Only then does the tension begin to ease. The spear is lowered. People nod to him. Quiet greetings passed like invisible handshakes. One woman steps forward and hands him a warmed stone wrapped in hide. He takes it without looking at her and presses it to his chest. But something still feels off. You notice it in the way his shoulders stay tight. In how he keeps glancing toward the cave entrance as though he left something behind. Or someone. Eventually a second figure enters. Smaller and moving slower, limping slightly as they peel back the curtain and step inside. Another hunter, but younger. His face is pale, too pale. His hand clutches his side under the hide, and when he drops his gear you hear a faint clink, like bone against stone. He's injured. Now the group fully wakes. A few people rise and move toward him, voices low but firm. The elder who drank the herbal tea earlier begins prepping something again, crushing dried roots with renewed urgency. One of the older women moves aside her bedding to make room. The injured hunter tries to wave them off. Of course he does, but his hand falls weakly and he winces. A wide smear of dark red paints the inside of his cloak. Blood, dried and sticky. It's not gushing, it's not fresh, but it's enough. Someone cuts away the hide at his waist to reveal the damage, an ugly gash along his ribs, edged with bruises, inflamed and ragged. Not fatal, not yet, but one infection, one bad night, and this wound could end his story. You watch as the group shifts into care mode, not panic, efficiency. Water is warmed, herbs are mixed, a heated stone is wrapped and placed near the wound to relax the muscles. Someone uses a bone needle to stitch, the motion smooth from practice, and through it all, the first hunter, the one who came in before him, sits still, eyes staring into the fire like it holds a judgment only he can hear. You wonder if he blames himself, if he led the younger one into danger, or if he's just seeing the image of what could have been, what might still be if the fever sets in, if the wound turns bad. The others don't speak of blame, not out loud. They treat the wound, they share their heat, they move on. That's the rule here, no punishment for bad luck. If you survive the outside and make it home, you're still part of the circle. No one's casting you out because you stumbled or fought a boar and didn't win. The only failure is not returning, and even then, if your bones are recovered, they might still be brought back to the cave, laid with respect. Placed beside the fire one last time, you glance at the entrance. The flap is closed again, but the cold still creeps in around the edges. A reminder, out there is hunger, wind and teeth. In here there's blood, but also hands, fire, eyes watching for movement, hearts that shift a rhythm when yours begins to fail. There's an old debate, aren't they all old in this context, about how far prehistoric communities went to protect their wounded. Did they carry the injured of Sherdid for miles? Did they make space for those who couldn't hunt? The answer increasingly seems to be yes. Evidence shows that people with severe injuries, even missing limbs, lived for years after their trauma. That means someone helped them live. That means the circle widened, not shrank. And so, when you see the boy finally settle into the bedding, his wound dressed, his breathing slow and shallow, you know what's happening isn't just healing. It's memory being protected. The warmth of the cave returns, slowly. The hunter's gear is unpacked. Bits of dried meat, a scrap of antler, a blackened stone tool. Nothing grand, nothing that announces success. But that's not the point. The The point is that he came back, that they both did. You watch the firelight dance across their faces, and you can't help but wonder what waited for them out there. Was it an animal? A fall? An enemy tribe? No one asks. If the hunters want to tell the story, they will. But not tonight. Tonight is for staying alive. The cave holds them now. It presses warmth into the cracks. The injured boy sleeps. The elder breathes easier. The door remains sealed. And somewhere outside, the snow keeps falling. Unaware that it's been defeated, for now, by furs and fire and the sheer, unbreakable will on to return home. The fire is low again, humming more than burning, and the cave has entered that strange, quiet lull where time seems to freeze along with everything else. No one's really asleep anymore, but no one's talking either. People just lie there, blinking slowly, faces lit faintly by the pulse of glowing coals. The hunter with the stitched-up ribs breathes with a wet rasp, curled into the curve of an elder's arm. Beside him, the hot stone bundle has gone cold and is being quietly swapped out for a fresh one. And then, through the flickering light and the hush of half-conscious bodies, a movement, small, almost shy, catches your eye. Someone's painting on the cave wall. They're hunched near the back, close enough to the fire to see, but far enough to go unnoticed. Until now. It's a young woman, hair braided with bits of shell and dried grass. She has a small bowl in one hand, made from a hollowed-out piece of bone, and a brush in the other. A simple stick, frayed at the end. The bowl holds pigment, ochre, maybe, or soot mixed with animal fat. Her strokes are slow, purposeful, even gentle. Not like she's decorating a wall, but like she's writing in a language no one speaks anymore. You shift your position and peer around someone's shoulder to get a better view. The shape is half finished, something with long legs, a bowed back, antlers or horns curling forward. A reindeer, maybe. Or a spirit of one. It's not photorealistic, but it's powerful. The kind of image that sticks in your brain even when you look away. She doesn't pause to admire it. She just dips the brush again and keeps going. And suddenly, the cave doesn't feel like a shelter anymore. It feels like a gallery, a journal, a witness. You scan the walls and realize how many layers there are. Some faded almost to invisibility, others sharp and bold. A stampede of bison, all legs and motion. A bird mid-flight, wings stretching toward the ceiling. Human figures too, stick-like but full of intention. You'd seen them before, of course. You've been in this cave long enough to notice the art, but now you're watching it being made. And that changes everything. What's she trying to say? You wonder if she's telling a story. Maybe it's a hunt they went on last season. Or a dream she had, or something else entirely. Maybe it's a message to someone long dead, or not born yet. A memory pressed into stone so that it won't vanish in the smoke and sleep of the next night. You imagine her fingers are cold, her knees sore from kneeling on rough rock, but she doesn't stop, not for anything. And that begs the question, why? There's no practical reason to paint a wall in a cave where people are barely surviving. No calories to be gained, no threats to be repelled. But still, here she is, marking the wall like it's the most urgent thing in the world. Like if she doesn't do it, the shape might disappear, the story might fade, the thing she saw or felt might never be known again. There's an idea among archaeologists that cave painting wasn't just art, it was ritual. That maybe this act of creation connected them to something beyond their frozen, hungry world. Maybe they believed the image brought power, control. Maybe painting the animal helped ensure a successful hunt. Or maybe it wasn't about power at all. Maybe it was about remembering, naming, making sure the reindeer existed somewhere, even if the real ones vanished. Others argue the opposite, that this wasn't religious or magical at all, that these paintings were the Netflix of the Ice Age, boredom killers, storytelling devices, or the result of a restless mind in a time of long, dark days and even longer nights. And honestly, both theories feel true, because you can see both in her face, focus and frustration, reverence and improvisation. She stops suddenly and wipes a mistake away with her palm, smudging the red lines into a blur. Then she adds new strokes over the top, letting the old mistake become part of the image. Not erased, just transformed. You wonder if anyone ever painted over someone else's work, or if that was some kind of sacred taboo. Did artists leave each other's marks untouched, or did they compete for space? Turning the walls into collaborative chaos. There's no way to know, but here it looks peaceful. like she has permission. The cave is watching her, and you are too. A child crawls over to sit beside her, saying nothing. He just watches, his little hands folded in his lap. She doesn't acknowledge him, but she doesn't send him away either. After a while, he starts copying the motion in the dust beside her, dragging his fingers through the grit to make clumsy shapes. Circles, maybe a crude fish. Definitely a few blobs that are just blobs. He's learning, not because someone told him to, but because it's there. It's happening. And that's how knowledge survives. You can't stop thinking about how strange and beautiful this is. In the middle of the coldest winter, in the middle of a disease-ridden, lice-infested, snore-filled cave, someone is painting. Because she has to. Because it matters, not for beauty, not for praise, but for presence. The wall won't forget. And neither will you. The painting nears completion, the lines bold and strange, the creature staring out with wide, round eyes. The artist sets the bowl down carefully, stretches her arms, then stands. She doesn't bow, doesn't wait for approval, just slips back under her bedding, pulling the hides over her head like nothing happened. The boy is still sitting there, staring at the painting. You imagine he'll draw it again tomorrow, in the dirt, on a stone in his dreams. Outside, the cold rages on. But here in this hollow, something has been added to the world, a picture, a whisper, a mark that says, I was here. I saw this. I made it stay. And that's what humans do, isn't it? We take the nothing, the dark, the cold, and we make meaning. We draw reindeer on the walls. You've dozed again, just long enough to lose the thread of time, the warmth of the fire, the hush of breath around you. The hum of distant wind, they pull you under like a weighted blanket. But then something shifts. The cave feels different. Not colder, not louder, just heavier, like the air has thickened, or something ancient is moving nearby. You blink the fog from your eyes and lift your head, and that's when you see it. A body. No, not recently dead. This one has been here a while. Nestled in a carved-out niche along the back wall, almost unnoticed beneath a draped hide, is a human figure lying in perfect stillness. The shape is unmistakable, limbs tucked in, fetal and respectful, the skull tilted slightly downward as if still listening. There's a necklace of beads, bone and shell, looped around the neck. You can't tell how long they've been gone. Years, probably. Decades. Maybe longer. The cave's cold has preserved them, not as a skeleton in the dirt, but as someone still here. And now that you're looking, you see more, not just one. A second body further down the wall, this one wrapped completely in furs tied with what looks like woven grass cords. A third lies closer to the floor, partially obscured by stacked storage baskets and stone tools. These aren't forgotten corpses or discarded remains. These are placed, deliberately, lovingly. This is not just a shelter, it's also a tomb. You feel your breath catch slightly as the realization settles. You've been sleeping feet away from the dead. You've been warming yourself beside them, breathing the same smoky air. And the strangest part? You're not scared. Not really. There's no horror in the air, no sense of decay or dread, just reverence, stillness, memory. This is how prehistoric people honoured their dead, not with towering stone slabs or marble graves, but with inclusion. The dead don't leave, they stay. Their bodies remain in the warmth of the community, wrapped in the same hides, laid near the same fire, as if sleep was the only real difference between then and now. Anthropologists argue about the meaning behind this practice. Some say it points to early religion, an understanding of the afterlife, or at least a belief that the soul lingers after breath stops. Others think it was practical. The dead were kept close because the ground was too frozen to bury them, or because taking the time to dig meant risking exposure. But even the skeptics admit this kind of placement doesn't happen by accident. You look at the beads again, still gleaming faintly under the firelight. Someone strung those, carefully, maybe for ceremony, maybe just as a final gesture. Maybe they were placed after death, or maybe they were worn every day until the final day and left untouched. It's impossible to know, but you can feel the care in it. Someone loved this person. You imagine the moment, the cold breath of winter thick in the air, the fire burning low, the group gathered, not in grief exactly, but in recognition, in stillness. A body being wrapped not because it is disgusting, but because it is sacred. Eyes are closed, words are said, not in the way we think of prayers, but in rhythms, in chants, in repetition. A farewell without finality, And then, placement. Not in the ground, but here, inside the circle, where warmth still touches skin and voices still echo nearby. There's a boy awake across from you, staring at the same figure. His eyes are wide, but not afraid, just curious. His hand rests on his mother's arm, and she murmurs something to him, stroking his hair. It's gentle. It's ordinary. As though she's saying, "That's your grandmother. She watches over you. You wonder if that's true." Or if she's just telling him what he needs to hear. But either way, the dead are still family. One of the elders slowly rises and walks toward the wrapped body nearest the fire. She kneels beside it, places a hand gently on the mound and whispers something you can't hear. A name maybe, a memory. Maybe she just tells them about the dream she had last night. And then, just as gently, she adjusts the edge of the hide covering the body's feet, tucking it in with the same motion you've seen her use on sleeping children. No one reacts, no one gawks. This is part of the rhythm, and the fire doesn't flinch. You think about your own time, how the dead are whisked away, boxed, buried, hidden from sight, spoken of only in past tense. Here, they are present. They don't haunt the cave, they inhabit it. And that makes sense. If you believe the person is more than flesh, more than motion, then why would you send them away? Why wouldn't you want them close? There's another theory, less accepted, but gaining traction, that prehistoric people viewed death as a continuation, not a cessation. That the body, once stilled, became a kind of container, a memory vessel. That dreams were messages from the ones who had stepped deeper into the darkness. And if that's true, then the placement of the dead here isn't just ceremonial. It's functional. You wonder how many dreams in this cave have come from those bodies. How many whispered insights, how many warnings before the hunt, how many quiet reassurances during the worst nights. Maybe the bear in your dream wasn't just a symbol. Maybe it was someone, watching, guiding, or simply reminding you you are not alone in here. Eventually the boy falls back asleep, his hands still resting on his mother's. The elder returns to her spot, wraps herself in furs and breathes out slowly, her task complete. The cave hums again, with the soft murmur of sleep returning. You lie back, head cushioned on a folded hide, and stare at the ceiling. Smoke curls above you, shadows dance. The carved constellations blink dimly in the firelight, and nearby, someone who once walked this cave now rests forever in it. They are not cold, they are not gone, they are simply sleeping longer than the rest of you. You're not sure when you fell asleep again. 1 minute you were blinking at the ceiling, tracing stars with your eyes, and the next you were floating through some formless dream full of crackling fire and twitching animals that kept turning into people and then back again. You wake slowly, thick-headed, your mouth dry, the kind of dry that tastes like ash and old leather. Around you, the cave is stirring, not with urgency, but with the steady movement of people preparing for something. You smell it before you fully register the shift. Meat. Not just the usual dried strips you've grown used to gnawing like ancient jerky, but fresh meat. Blood warm, gamey. Alive yesterday, dead now, and being cooked in a shallow pit near the back of the fire. Someone, probably one of the night watchers, has dug a groove in the centre of the hearth and laid in smooth stones. Above that, a hide stretched taut to form a makeshift pan. Steam curls from the top like a slow-moving ribbon, carrying with it the scent of marrow, fat and bone. Your stomach wakes up before your brain does. It growls loudly, and you catch a few amused glances from those already crouched near the fire, stirring the makeshift broth with sticks and flattened bone spoons. One of them, the same boy who helped pass out warm stones earlier, grins and waves you closer. He taps the space beside him, then the steaming pot, and you don't need a translation. You're invited. You shuffle over, dragging your fur wrap with you like some semi-conscious slug, and settle cross-legged on the gritty floor. The warmth from the pit hits you in waves, humid, almost wet, like the air in a sauna but flavoured with survival. Someone ladles a portion of the stew into a shallow stone bowl and hands it to you without fanfare. The surface shimmers with fat. Bits of meat, root, and some unidentifiable stringy green float lazily near the top. You taste it. It's perfect. Not perfect in the culinary sense, you're not going to write this down as a recipe, but perfect in the way it lands in your body. Like you've been hollow for days and suddenly remembered what fullness feels like. The heat travels down your throat and blooms in your chest, then settles somewhere deep in your core, where your ribs are still thawing from the inside out. It's greasy and earthy and maybe a little questionable, but you'd eat 3 more bowls if they let you. You glance around and realise this is more than just breakfast. It's an event, a group ritual, the closest thing this cave has to celebration. Even in the Paleolithic, meals were sacred. You watch as the others eat, some hunched over their bowls, others laughing quietly between bites. One of the elders holds a dripping hunk of meat in both hands and tears into it like a lion, juice running down his chin and no one flinches. This is not a place of napkins and shame. Food is meant to be devoured, loudly, with appreciation. Near the entrance, 2 figures return from outside, their arms heavy with more supplies, sticks, bark, fresh snow in a woven basket. Their cloaks are crusted in ice, and one of them has red fingers despite the gloves. But they're smiling. You can see it in the lines on their faces. They made it out. And more importantly, they came back with enough. The meat, you realise, probably isn't from a hunt. Not yesterday, at least. It's too fresh, too fast to have been tracked, killed, butchered and cooked overnight. No, this is stored meat, kept frozen outside the cave in nature's own deep freeze. One of the fringe theories floating around in certain academic circles is that Ice Age communities practiced what you might generously call proto-refrigeration. Snow-packed caches, stone-covered pits outside the living area, primitive pantries really. And here's your evidence, bubbling happily in a hide-lined pot. The soup's not just a meal, it's a timeline. You're tasting days, maybe weeks of planning. A successful hunt from some earlier time. Bones cracked for marrow, offal reserved for medicine or bait. Everything used, nothing wasted, and now the reward. There's even a debate among anthropologists about communal meals as the root of human civilization. That it wasn't fire or tools or language that made us what we are, but the moment someone decided to share food. To sit, to pass, to wait for others to eat first. That right there, that's society. You glance again at the boy beside you, now licking his bowl with such enthusiasm you're tempted to follow suit. But you don't. Not yet. You savour the last bites. Soft meat gone stringy, whatever root they boiled to mush, the subtle tang of something fermented lurking in the background. Your body doesn't care what it is, it just wants more. You pass your bowl forward and someone refills it. No questions, no hesitation. You're part of the group now, or at least they're letting you pretend to be. From the far side of the fire, someone begins to hum, softly, tunelessly, but rhythmic. A few people join in, just enough to set a tone. Not a song exactly, more like a signal. That something important has been done, that a thing was killed, and now its death means life for everyone here. There's a reverence in the way they eat. Not solemn, not dramatic, but present. Every bite is conscious. No one's scrolling on a phone or checking a clock, no one's standing up mid-meal. You stay until the bowl is empty. You stay until the fire starts to hiss as snow is added to the pit to quench the coals. You stay until the warmth settles deep and sleep starts tugging again at the edges of your thoughts. The hunter, with the stitched ribs, hasn't eaten yet, but someone's feeding him slowly, small sips from a ladle, his eyes fluttering open with each swallow. His lips are dry, but he drinks. And you get the sense that this too is a kind of medicine. Not herbs, not chance, just warmth and broth, passed from one hand to another. Your bowl is empty again. You place it gently beside the fire. Outside the snow still falls, but inside the cave smells like fat and smoke and life. The meal has passed, but the heat still lingers in your belly like a small animal, curled up and purring. The group has shifted again, not back to sleep, but into that quiet post-breakfast hum of low activity, when everyone finds something to do with their hands, whether or not it's necessary. A few people are stripping sinew from bones, running it between their teeth and fingers to soften it into string. Another pair is bent over a pile of flint, striking gently, not to make sparks, but to shape edges, sharp enough to slice, dull enough not to snap mid-use. Even the children have gone into task mode, sorting rocks by size or plucking tufts of fur from a stiff frozen pelt someone's trying to thaw near the fire. But what really catches your eye is the woman in the corner, older, with a spine curved like a question mark and hands that look like she's been wringing time itself. She's holding something in her lap. At first glance, it just looks like a bundle of hides, but then she unwraps it, layer by layer, with a care so slow and deliberate it feels ceremonial. Inside, nestled between layers of soft cloth and something that looks suspiciously like woolly rhino hair, is a small collection of objects, charms, the tokens, oddities, you can't look away. She lays them out in a neat line on a flat stone, A twisted piece of bone carved into a spiral. A tooth, maybe human, maybe not, strung on a strip of sinew. A blackened stone polished smooth on one side, and a tiny sculpture, barely 2 inches tall, of a round, faceless figure with wide hips and a heavy belly, the famous shape. The one scholars always refer to as the Venus figures. Fertility icons, maybe, or good luck charms, or early action figures. No one can say for sure, but here it is, in her hand, not in a museum, not behind glass. Real, used, loved. The woman holds it between her palms for a long moment, her eyes closed as if listening to something only she can hear. Then she sets it gently back among the others, sighs and begins rubbing the smooth black stone with her thumb, over and over, until it glistens faintly in the firelight. You've stumbled into the spiritual corner of the cave, not a temple exactly. There's no altar, no incense, no hymns, but this is the closest thing they have to religion, to ritual. These objects are not just keepsakes, they're memory anchors, power items, and whether that power is real or just deeply believed doesn't seem to matter. In a world where winter tries to erase you, anything that helps you remember who you are is worth keeping close. Some researchers argue that these talismans represent early shamanistic practices, items carried by the healers and dream guides of the tribe. Others suggest they're personal, intimate, like prehistoric diaries, carved during pregnancy, worn during hunts, buried with the dead, found again, passed down. Whatever they are, they're clearly more than decoration. You scoot a little closer, careful not to disturb the invisible boundary that seems to surround the old woman and her collection. She doesn't glance up, but you feel her awareness. She knows you're there, watching. That's okay. You're supposed to. After a few minutes, she begins talking, not to you exactly, not to anyone, just speaking aloud in that soft, rasping tone that sounds like wind dragging over bark. She points to each item as she speaks, tapping them gently. A name, a story, a spell. You can't understand the words, but the rhythm is unmistakable. This is a telling, a recitation of something important. One of the younger women moves closer and sits beside us, listening, nodding at the right moments. She's heard this before, but she's hearing it again, and again matters. That's how it stays alive. That's how you make sure the stone doesn't just become a rock. You tell its story over and over, until even someone who wasn't there starts to believe they were. The old woman finishes, slowly rewraps the objects, then holds the bundle against her chest for a long moment before placing it in a carved niche in the wall, just above head height. Not hidden, but not flaunted either. The cave accepts it like it always does, quietly. Another memory placed where it can watch the fire. There's a theory, again, one of those speculative stomaches, that some Ice Age caves functioned like early libraries. Not in the sense of books, but in memory storage. A kind of shared knowledge bank. Items placed in specific spots. Stories associated with specific alcoves. You want to remember when the mammoths passed through last? Go to the left wall, third niche. Touch the bone spiral, remember the flood. The tooth tied with sinew, ask the elder who holds it. It wasn't writing, but it was literacy of a kind. You lean back against the wall and close your eyes for a moment, listening to the small sounds around you. The fire crackles. Someone laughs softly. A piece of hide is being shaken out. Snow shifts against the sealed entrance, like a hand pressing gently from the outside. You open your eyes again and see that the girl who sat beside the old woman is now holding something of her own. A necklace made of small bird bones, strung with sinew and painted with soot. She wears it, then removes it. Wears it again, testing it, trying it on like a question. She presses her thumb to one of the bones and closes her eyes, mimicking the elder's gesture. Another memory being shaped. You're witnessing the transmission of culture, of story, of meaning. Not through books or screens or tablets, but through repetition. Presence. Touch. This is how memory survives without ink. You wonder what you would pass on if it were you, what object you'd leave in the wall, what story you'd hope someone else would whisper in the dark long after you'd stopped breathing. Maybe a stone that fit perfectly in the palm. Maybe a carved animal that no longer exists. Maybe just a simple loop of string with no explanation. The point is, it wouldn't be lost. Not if someone remembered. And here, in the deepest part of the cave, warmed by the thinnest edge of firelight, surrounded by the breath of sleeping bodies and the soft murmur of old women who still speak to stones, you understand the cave isn't just shelter. It's memory made of rock. The fire is beginning to fade again, down to the glowing reds and oranges that pulse like a slow heartbeat. You lie still, listening. There's a hush over the cave now, not silence exactly, but a gentler sort of noise, the kind that only comes when everyone has settled into their tasks, their thoughts, or their sleep. Even the children are quiet, tucked under layers of fur, their legs sprawled in directions that defy anatomy. The scent of broth and smoke still lingers in the air, mixing now with the musky tang of wet hides drawing too close to the heat. Everything is damp and lived in, real. It feels less like camping and more like being inside the body of something warm and slow, a creature made of stone and people and flickering firelight. You shift a little, careful not to make too much noise, and glance around. Most everyone is resting again, though you can still hear low murmurs. 2 people whispering near the wall, their voices too soft to understand. Across the room, someone is rubbing something between their palms. You squint through the haze and catch the glint of bone needles. Sewing. Repairing a tear, maybe, or reinforcing a seam. And that's when it hits you. All these clothes, the furs, the wraps, the thick layers protecting everyone from the bone-deep cold weren't just scavenged. They were made, stitched, adjusted, repaired again and again. Each one has passed through dozens of hands. Each stitch means something. A success, a failure, a memory sewn into a sleeve. You look down at your own hide blanket and notice the joins, some done with sinew, some with twisted plant fibres. Crude but functional, quilted like memory. There's something poetic about it, isn't there? In a world trying to kill you, someone still took the time to make sure the hem was straight. One of the women near the wall hums while she works. It's not a melody, you know, just a rise and fall of sound, repeated with no clear beginning or end. It wraps around the cave like a lullaby. You think about how many nights that same tune has echoed off these walls. How many children have fallen asleep to it. How many elders hummed it decades ago, their voices now quiet. Their bones may be resting somewhere behind the very stones you're sitting on. There's a boy watching the sewing, eyes wide. He can't be older than 5 or 6, but he's already holding a small awl, too small to do real work, but enough to mimic the motion. He's pressing it against a strip of fur, poking and threading with the focus of someone who's been told this is important. And it is. One day he'll be the one making the clothes that keep his family alive, or the shoes that let someone walk 10 miles without bleeding, or the hood that keeps frostbite off a newborn's cheek. Here, sewing is not a craft, it's a lifeline. You remember reading once that needles made from bone and ivory were among the most precious tools of the Ice Age. Not spears, not knives, but these tiny slivers of carved bone, with holes drilled through them. Sometimes decorated, sometimes passed down like heirlooms. Lose your spear, you might get lucky and make another. Lose your needle in winter, and someone's going to freeze. Fringe researchers have even suggested that early humans might have seen sewing as sacred, something closer to magic than a craft. After all, what else lets you take the body of one creature and use it to protect another? The stitch isn't just a loop of thread, it's a resurrection. A way to honour the animal, extend its purpose, keep its warmth moving through someone else's life. The boy finishes a crooked line of thread, proudly holds it up, and the woman beside him nods in approval. No patronising smile, just respect. That's the rhythm here. You learn by doing. You watch, you imitate, you fail quietly and try again. No one calls it school, but that's what it is. Education by absorption. It occurs to you that no one here owns much. There are no closets, no drawers. Every possession fits into a pouch or gets folded under bedding. And yet each item is wrapped in meaning. That cloak hanging near the fire, someone wore it through 2 winters. The tear across the shoulder, a tusk too close. The patched knee, a fall on ice, and someone cared enough to mend it afterward. Even the beads sewn into collars or cuffs tell stories. One of the older men wears a necklace with carved bone pieces shaped like little teeth. You'd thought they were decorative, maybe even intimidating. But now, after watching the slow hum of sewing and the quiet dignity of these people, you realise each tooth might stand for something. A hunt, a child's birth, a death, a season survived. These aren't ornaments, they're reminders. You reach out and touch the edge of your blanket again. Though it's heavier now, not physically but symbolically. Every stitch is a name you don't know. Every fold was once held by someone else's hands. Someone yawns behind you, a deep sound that shakes their whole chest. The cave responds by settling further. Bodies shift, hides rustle, A stick in the fire pops, and a few sparks drift lazily upward before fading into the stone above, and still the sewing continues. You think about how much of the modern world is stitched by machines. Fast, anonymous, disposable. But here every thread is personal, made by hand, held with care. And if a stitch fails, someone notices, someone repairs it, and when they do, the garment becomes something even stronger. A living document of failure and recovery. The boy dozes off eventually, his tiny awl still clutched in his fingers. The woman finishes the seam she was working on, ties it off with a practiced tug, and leans back with a sigh. She doesn't smile, doesn't look around for praise. She just folds the garment and places it carefully beside her bedding. Outside, the wind picks up. You can hear it whistling against the stone, pressing at the seams of the cave like it's testing for weakness. But inside, the seams hold, literally and metaphorically. You pull your fur closer, feeling the stitch lines under your fingers. A seam is such a simple thing, a thread passing through two pieces, pulling them into one. But in this world, seams are everything. They keep in the warmth, they keep out the cold, they hold together the stories you wear on your back. The wind is angry now, you can hear it, really hear it, shrieking across the entrance like a predator denied its prey. It tears at the hide flaps with invisible claws, howling in pulses, rising and falling as though breathing, alive and hunting. Snowflakes drift in through the seams of the doorway, carried sideways by the force of the storm. Even the fire reacts, its flames flattening and bowing low under the sudden gusts of cold air. No one panics. Instead, they move, quietly, efficiently, like a colony of birds reacting to some shared instinct. Two adults rise and reinforce the entrance, adding more furs, tucking in the edges, stuffing dried moss and softened bark into the tiny spaces where cold leaks in like smoke. One of them lifts a long, flat stone and leans it against the base of the flap to weigh it down. Every gesture is deliberate, practiced. This isn't their first storm, not even close. Someone stirs the fire, adding more fuel, not just twigs or bark this time, but precious hardwood, saved for moments like this. A log crackles and catches with a reluctant flame, then glows deeper and brighter than before. The heat intensifies, pushing back against the incoming chill. A wall of breath and effort against the ancient force clawing just outside. You glance around and realize just how many people are awake now. It's like the cave itself has turned into an organism. Every limb alert, every breath measured. The injured boy with the stitched ribs has been moved further from the entrance, closer to the center of the cave. Two older children are helping shift bedding and gear, hands steady and eyes sharp. They're not scared, but they're paying attention. That's what keeps you alive. A low whistle cuts through the noise. A signal, not human. Somewhere deep in the stone, the wind has found a crevice to sing through. It produces a hollow, eerie note like a flute made of bones. One of the elders looks up and listens, then mutters something under her breath. A joke, maybe, or a warning. The sound is haunting. You close your eyes and imagine what it would be like to be out there now. No cave, no furs, no fire. Just white, endless white, and a scream of wind so sharp it slices the thoughts from your head. You'd vanish in an hour, maybe less, frozen where you stood, snow filling your mouth, your eyes, the world erasing you grain by grain. But you're not out there, you're in here. Wrapped in layers that were hunted, scraped, stitched, and worn. Warmed by the breath of 24 living bodies and a fire burning with the careful precision of people who know that one spark can be everything. You're held not by luxury, not by comfort, but by the accumulated intelligence of survival. Someone begins to hum again, soft and low. It's not the same tune as before, but it has the same weight. A lullaby, maybe, or a storm song meant to soothe the wind itself. Others join in, one by one, layering their voices like fur on fur. You don't understand the words, or maybe there are no words at all, but the sound fills the cave like smoke, warm and slow and ancient. Even the baby, yes, there is a baby, buried under layers of deer hide and tucked beneath its mother's arm, stops fussing at the sound. Its little hand, barely visible, relaxes, fingers opening in sleep. The mother doesn't stop rocking. Her eyes stay open, focused on nothing, just listening, feeling. There's something deeply powerful about watching humans settle into stillness, not from fear, but from defiance, as if they are saying, "We hear you, wind, but we've heard worse, we're still here." And then, in the far corner of the cave, a man stands. He's quiet, tall, with a face that looks carved more than born. He wears a heavy fur cloak decorated with small bones stitched in a circular pattern around the hem. When he walks, the bones clack faintly against one another, like wind chimes made from history. In his hand he carries a staff, not for walking, but for speaking. He approaches the fire and taps the staff once against the stone floor. Everyone falls silent. You expect a story, a chant, a warning, but he just lifts the staff and points it upward, toward the cave ceiling. And then you see it. A shape, painted or etched. It's hard to tell in the flickering light. A spiral again? No, not quite. It's a swirl, a circular motion radiating from a central point, like a storm, or the sun, or both. He speaks one word, just one. Everyone nods. And that's it. He returns to his place, staff resting across his knees. Message delivered. A symbol, a sound, a shared understanding. That's all they need, because that's what this is, a reminder. The storm is big. But the group is bigger. You don't need a sermon when you have memory. There's a long-held theory, less about archaeology, more about anthropology, that humans survive not because we're the strongest or fastest, but because of ritual, the repetition of behaviour, the choreography of response. Storm comes, you do this. Fire fades, you do that. Ritual isn't superstition, it's strategy. It turns chaos into pattern. It gives the group something to hold on to when the wind starts to scream. And tonight, you see it in motion. One woman begins to braid dried grasses into tight cords. Another unrolls a fur bundle and begins to mend holes again. A man rewraps the firewood bundle for tomorrow, even as the storm howls that there may be no tomorrow. The injured boy is fed another spoonful of broth. The baby sleeps, the woman hums, the wind rages, and the cave holds. Not because it's invincible, but because they've made it into something more than stone. A shelter, yes, but also a vessel, a body, a memory, a family. Tomorrow, if the storm breaks, some of them will go outside. They'll check the meat cache. They'll look for tracks. They'll gather snow to melt. But tonight, no one leaves. Tonight, they lean into each other and let the storm pass over them like a wave. You lie back down, heart slower now, body warmed. The wind may scream, but inside it is only quiet.